Hail, adventurers! Gather round and let me tell you about the Wizard Scroll. Tales of sword-wielding warriors of legendary status, a wannabe spellcaster trying to earn her Wiz GED, and even a couple orcs who don't play by nobody's rules. This is truly some of the most depraved, messed up stuff ever to be conjured by Quill and Ink. Tune in to the latest episode today and tell them Azataz the Wise sent you. Toodles!
Brandywine Productions, the company owned by Walter Hill, David Giler, and Gordon Carroll, was immediately interested in making Alien 2, and it still took 7 years to happen. After several regime changes within 20th Century Fox throughout the 80s, the ball really began to roll once producer Lawrence Gordon became president of the studio. He came across a 42-page treatment that had been written by a young man by the name of James Cameron, who at the time had recently been hired to co-write Rambo: First Blood Part 2 with Sylvester Stallone. As a director, Cameron only had the B-movie Piranha 2: The Spawning under his belt. Gordon reached out to Cameron to see if he could expand on the treatment, and luckily for him, Cameron's next directorial feature, The Terminator, still in pre-production at that point, ended up being delayed for 9 months due to its star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, being contracted to film Conan the Destroyer first. This gave Cameron enough time to work on the treatment, which he beefed up to 90 pages. Gordon and the Fox execs loved this version, but Cameron wanted to direct it too. Skeptical at first, the Fox execs were quick to hire Cameron for the job once his Terminator film proved to be a worldwide smash. Filmed at Pinewood Studios in the fall of 1985, the production was plagued with speed bumps, mainly caused by Cameron's tumultuous relationship with his British crew, who were prone to taking hour-long tea breaks and who generally worked at a slower, less intense pace than that of American film crews. Both his director of photography and first AD were fired and replaced, and eventually one of his stars, James Remar, was too. Sigourney Weaver came back to portray Lieutenant Ellen Ripley once again, only this time she was joined by a slew of actors portraying infantrymen of the Colonial Marines, because while the first film was a haunted house movie in space, Aliens was to be a war movie in space. The film was a box office success and became the 7th highest grossing film of 1986. Received mostly positive reviews from critics and was the movie that turned Aliens into a full-on franchise. Sigourney Weaver was even nominated for Best Actress at the Academy Awards, the first time a science fiction film was awarded that distinction. With the introduction of the Colonial Marines, Aliens was turned into action figures for kids, comic books, and several video games. And within the initial film series, it spawned 2 more sequel films. But what did we think of this movie? Join me, Matt McGregor, along with my co-hosts Harris McCabe and Colin Shaw, as we aim our sights down on the first sequel of the Alien franchise. So load up your unnecessarily huge hydraulic gun, detach yourself from that weird slimy egg sac dispenser thing, and blast off with us as we nuke the entire site from orbit, because this time, it's war. We watch the second movie in the Alien franchise of films. This is 1986's James Cameron classic, Aliens. This is a show about franchises. Science fiction franchises. You're listening to License to Watch.
Why in the world was this movie made?
Make sure you use the noisy table a lot. Yeah. The table is basically like the 4th regular podcast host.
Is it a piece of machinery from like an oversized clock tower?
I think it might be, yeah, perhaps a part of a gear or a...
Or maybe like a steampunk...
blimp?
Like axle for some kind of little one-man rocket car.
A locomotive with no tracks.
All right, here we are. This is our second Aliens episode. This is License to Watch, and we're all here. Our special guest, he was floating around in space for 57 years, but we got him. He's back.
Haven't aged a day, baby.
His hair's a little longer, but that's about the only difference. Jonathan Maurer, what's up?
It is so good to be back on License to Watch with the homies. Thank you guys for having me to talk about a film I absolutely love and adore. So let's get to this.
Yeah. Harris, Colin, how are you guys doing?
All right.
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to talking about one of my favorite movies ever.
I'm hanging in.
Alien Resurrection.
No, we're going to talk about that favorite movie ever later. Now we're talking about Aliens, the pinnacle of the almost universrsally high quality Alien franchise.
And undeniably
debate
James
that.
Cameron's best movie.
I will debate that.
Oh, I will debate that too, because I mean we've already
Two
talked.
blasphemous comments back to back.
We've already talked about True Lies.
Yeah, I don't think anyone actually thinks that.
No, that's probably true.
So this is pretty much a movie that is like amongst. I mean, we're the demographic. I don't know if women like this movie as much as we like it.
I will rebut that.
But
You're coming out with the hot takes.
I almost like in some way like was looking forward to talking about Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection more, because those I feel like people might have stronger,
It's controversial shit.
more
going on there.
controversial opinions. Exactly.
Everyone knows this is great.
Yeah,
Try to find fault with this one.
that's why I don't like doing movies like this sometimes, because like Jaws, for instance, like you know, everybody loves it. It's a classic.
When
Movies that are
when we did Scarface on our Patreon account, which you guys can subscribe for only $1 a month.
only $1.
Yeah,
Harris?
only $1. That's $12 a year. It's a real steal. But that was a movie where that was a fun episode, but we basically just sucked Scarface's dick for 2 hours.
A
So-
dick with many scars on its face.
No,
if
that's
you will.
Scar Dick. You're thinking of Scar Dick. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
It's very racy. They show a lot more in that one.
Scar dick. It's gross.
So-
the porno, the gay porn version of Scarface.
So
Wait, what's Tony Montana's name in that movie?
Yeah, and how does the little friend have a little friend, if you know what I'm saying?
say hello to me, my own little friend.
Oh, gross.
So let's get right into. I think the first thing we should jump on is the history, our personal history with this movie, because it seems like we all have one. I think this is a movie we've probably all seen as kids. I know we got into it a little bit with our guest Alex Parzo from the Alien episode, and I'm sure a lot of us have similar stories with this. Jonathan, as our guest, would you like to go first?
Sure. My memory of the Alien franchise really is 90% Alien, the original, which I still think is a high watermark for the franchise, which is not a knock at all on this sequel, which I think is one of the best sequels of all time, which maybe we can rank or talk about later. But I did not spend nearly as much time with the sequels, and 3 and 4 and moving forward. I can't even remember right now when's the last time I saw those. But Matt, you and I watched Aliens at a film festival screening. We can also discuss that. Michael Biehn had done a Q&A there. This was a couple years ago.
Biener.
Biener, not
Wait,
a good
I think
Q&A.
I think I was
not
there.
a guy known for his Q&As.
I think I was there for that. I remember that Q&A.
Were you there? Well, it was not much to write
Yeah,
home about.
it was
But
funny.
the film
Is
constantly
he actually on crack
claps.
now? He weighs about 80 pounds.
He's not,
and he is amped up.
He's not looking good.
He's
okay,
ready
let's
to
see.
go.
I remember some dubious statements he made there as well. But
He seemed like fun.
yeah, I digress about Michael Biehn. But this film, for me, you guys know, I think I love James Cameron. Huge fan of James Cameron and his film and his work. So this film, to me, always on a list of greatest sequels, always great sci-fi, great kind of action horror. To say I did see it first as a kid, young, and then did not really return to it for many, many years until you and I saw it later. And boy, it really, really ages terrifically well. Some interesting tech, I think, choices, some things that are quite futuristic and modern, some things that are almost anachronistic or that don't seem to match the kind of setting of the film. But overall, just an altogether fantastic movie. So revisiting it recently for this was a lot of fun.
I may have mentioned this in the last episode, but as a kid, I had the VHS trilogy. This is before Resurrection was a thing. And I tried to memorize these movies, mainly 2 and 3. I liked the first one, but again, it was like a little more adult, like slower paced. And like as a kid, I think you want something more akin to what this movie is. And the third movie, I don't know what attracted me to that. I just liked it. But
this movie, I tried to memorize everything about it, including like the cast I had mentioned. Like I would go through the characters' names in the credits and try to like become familiar with like who they are. Even the ones that like don't have lines in this movie, they had to die instantly or whatever. I was like, oh, that's Wierzbowski. I know him.
Yeah, where's Bowski and Frost,
Yeah.
Pharaoh.
Exactly. But yeah, I watched this a lot.
Spunkmeyer too. Sorry, Spunkmeyer. I had to say Spunkmeyer.
Wait, isn't Wierzbowski like in Starship Troopers or something? That's like almost the same thing, like another space marine.
I'm
The
not
actor
sure.
or the
character.
name?
What's the tall one that really likes Vasquez?
Oh,
that's
Is that Wierzbowski? That's
no,
not Wierzbowski.
Wierzbowski like doesn't have a line.
That's Drake.
That's
Drake.
Drake.
Oh, Drake. Is he in Starship
Certified
Troopers?
Lover Boy.
No, you're thinking of Jake Busey, who is this guy looks like Jake Busey if
Okay.
Jake Busey had like a doppelganger that was born,
I kinda
15
wanna look
years
this
before
up.
him.
Yeah, he does kind of look like Jake Busey.
That was going to be one of my jokes, was that Drake looked like Jake Busey, but
It's over now.
it's over now. Go on, Matt.
But yeah, I remember like as a kid remember Super Soakers, like, and you can buy like the bigger Super Soaker guns. Like that was the closest thing you could buy that looked like the guns from this movie. There
Jake
was even,
Busey's not the same guy.
No, that's what I'm saying. They look very similar.
What?
Let's put it this way. Jake Busey looks more like whoever that guy is, Mark Rolston, than he does like Gary Busey, his father.
I'm so sorry. This
Go
is
back
just
to the Super
shocking
Soakers.
to me.
yeah. Well, Jake Busey is like frightening looking, whereas the guy in this movie is like his face is tolerable to the human eye.
Oh, yeah, no.
Now,
I see
now
it
Colin
now.
sees it.
Yeah. Now that you mention that, yeah, there was a Super Soaker that you even had to hold like the guns in this movie, or it had, you had to two-hand it.
Yeah, that's nice.
And I used to want those so I could play aliens with my friends, basically. But yes, this is a big time childhood movie. Also, for as like it's an R-rated movie, it's not super like violent.
That surprised me returning to it this time. I remembered this movie much more violent than it actually is.
The most violent, visceral thing is when Bishop gets torn
Agreed.
asunder in the.
Agreed.
in
No
the
blood,
end.
but the violence of that moment is extremely affecting.
Yes.
Well, is the milk blood?
It certainly is meant to evoke it, but
He's
I mean,
human
it's
its
a clear.
that seeing his body get torn in half.
Right,
is
and his
traumatizing.
reaction is
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah,
It's
he doesn't look like
extraordinarily
he's enjoying
painful.
it.
And I mean, Cameron's relationship to tech and to androids or cyborgs or whatever terminology you want to use throughout the whole course of his career is so interesting, and he's doing so many things here that I think set up Terminator 2 in a lot of ways that differ from Terminator 1, but that also play off of Terminator 1. He's referencing back to the original Alien in ways that I think are very interesting, but going in different directions there as well. Really smart stuff. And yeah, the way that he's able to get such kind of terror without violence on screen so much, gore on screen at least.
And
gore.
also that moment in particular, where it comes in the movie, is right after we've gotten this redemption for, even if you never saw Alien and you don't know Ripley's backstory with androids, synthetic life forms or whatever, you hear it in this movie that she doesn't trust them. Something bad happened. Because I saw this before I ever saw Alien. And you know that she doesn't trust these guys. And you don't trust him either. Because frankly, Lance Henriksen looks evil and acts suspicious and evil throughout this movie. And then at the end you realize, oh no, he's a good guy. He really wanted to help. And you have this moment of him feeling like he accomplished something and he's won her over and he's won her trust. And then immediately he gets no time to enjoy it because he's immediately impaled and then bisected. Yeah, halved.
It's played well in that sense, although I find Bishop to be a more nuanced character than that. And it does kind of expose Ripley as flawed. Her judgment, it's like a second-class citizen. A lot has changed seemingly in the 57 years between, whatever the society was.
But this isn't based on this isn't based on her skepticism of new technology or whatever. It's based on her actual real life experience. It's not like she hates synthetic beings. She got along with Ash just fine until he flipped out and tried to murder everybody,
That's right. That's right. Although the movie Aliens here explores that concept more deeply than I think the original Alien did, because she doesn't know Ash is a cyborg in that film. I something you said, Matt, about that notion of gore being or not being in the film reminds me. I listened to it too late, so I didn't get through the whole thing. But just this morning, I was listening to a little bit in prep of this pod for a behind-the-scenes documentary making of Aliens, and there was a clip of James Cameron talking about his choice to actually dial back consciously gore, and he said obviously he was very enamored by Alien 1, but wanted to do different things in this film than that. And one of the things he said is that really that film's much more a horror film. And this, he wanted to be more about terror than horror, which is obviously a distinction in tone and tonality.
To me, it was suspense.
Sure, maybe a synonym of sorts.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely that too. But him talking about gore, actually, in his opinion, and I'd be inclined to agree, does not evoke feelings of horror in people. It evokes disgust. And that's a distinctly different thing. So for him, keeping that stuff off screen can help amp up, what you do with scary stuff. And the choice specifically with the chest burster and showing it in a less violent way than the original film does was part of that decision. So really to hear him speak about this film, very articulate, obviously brilliant filmmaker who's known for like huge set pieces, but he has great attention to detail, fine detail, that I think is what marks him from so many other action filmmakers who maybe can do what he can do on a broad scope, but can never dial in on the human aspect or the emotional aspect of those kinds of films like he can. No one, in my opinion.
No one could get near. No one could get far, wherever they are.
Absolutely. Mr. Dion, quite well said.
Colin, when's the first time you saw this movie?
I don't remember, but like I feel like it's always been there. Like every few years, it's always like cropped up again, burst out of my chest again. Somehow, it just keeps finding me. I remember watching it like many times over the years. So, and I don't remember the first time. It has always been, I guess.
I distinctly remember the first time I saw this movie, and I accept what you guys are saying about it not being gory. I would just say that I saw this movie as maybe a 7-year-old, maybe 7 probably. And when we lived in San Antonio, my room was in the middle of the hallway, and it was right across from the room we used as a den. So I had a bed that the foot of my bed was right up near where my doorway was. And I could see from my doorway across the hall into the doorway of the den, and the TV was set up right on the other side in the corner, and the couch was on the far wall. So basically, if my parents were watching movies late at night on that couch, they couldn't see into my room, but I could lean down and look over the foot of my bed and basically lay in my bed and watch a movie sideways through the doorway. And I
gave you
that.
a lot of problems with your spine, but you're better now.
I did that
That's
constantly.
why he's so tall.
Yeah. I did that almost every night. My parents would sit there and watch HBO, all the movies that we weren't allowed to watch.
This is the perfect jacking position.
And I was 7. I want to remind you, a little young. I wasn't that advanced, but like literally would lay on my bed upside down and lean my head off and watch movies that I wasn't supposed to watch every night. And
we're not talking about jacking off right now.
Yeah, lean that head off.
I mean, it wasn't. My parents weren't watching like porn. They weren't watching like Skinamax. They were just watching grown-up movies that were rated R. It was like, I think Crazy Ruthless People is another one that I remember, which is just like, it's rated R for like swearing. But this was the one movie over all the other ones that I watched over many months in that bed. This was the one movie that stuck out as like particularly traumatizing, and it was because you're right. There's not a lot of gore, but there's a lot of really frightening ideas.
And it's violent. Violence and gore,
yeah.
They're adjacent, but not necessarily the same thing. So yeah, it's absolutely affecting in that sense, but so much of it is happening subtly off screen or just off frame or in the imagination.
Where Ripley has a dream where she's been impregnated, and you get the cat hissing, and all of a sudden the camera angle is a little bit skewed and the close-ups are a little bit closer, and you can tell something's wrong and she's in discomfort, and then she's, convulsing, and then this thing bursts out of her chest. And no, it's not nearly as shocking or gory as
because we don't see
what
the
happened
burst
in the first movie. But, you do get that like horrible feeling of something's. It's like you said, the payoff of the gore isn't what frightens us. It's the lead up to it, and you get that sense of something's wrong. And then also, I remember particularly when I was young, the woman who they find in the tunnels, who they say, oh, this one's still alive, and she's just saying, kill me. And it's like, what the fuck? Why would somebody? No, we're desperate to live. We, as humans, we cling to survival. And this woman is begging for death. And why is that? It's like, because she knows what's coming and she doesn't want to go through it. And that's a horrific idea. Oh, we're in this scene that actually was cut out of an Austin Powers movie, I think. Just the workers on the colony having bullshit discussions about bureaucratic procedure.
Yeah. The kid's got a big wheel in the wrong sector.
Yeah.
What the hell? What the hell was that kid thinking? Like, why is that fun to a little kid? Like, oh, let's go down to this
Shining
sector.
fan.
It's super industrial down there. I know what that is, and it's fun for me.
They're going to dock that kid's credits, too. And
Yeah,
it's
of
going
course.
to be a real issue.
This, of course, is why the scene was ultimately cut.
Anyways, speaking of the gore, I think the one thing that like kind of leaves you wanting more, even though it's like really disturbing, is when the automated machine guns are shooting the alien. You don't actually see a lot of the aliens get shot, but at one point you do see one getting completely ripped apart by bullets, and it's real nasty, but it's almost like it almost like is not enough. You almost kind of want to, because obviously at this point you hate the aliens because they're bad. I mean, it's their nature, but
Debatable. But.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's their nature, but
Team Alien all the way.
Well, I don't hate the aliens. The aliens are antagonists, but they're just surviving. They don't invite much shit, right?
you don't hate him as much as Paul Reiser. Paul Reiser is
Right.
so
No,
hateable.
but that's
Exactly,
actually
yeah.
a key point to the movie is that really I think and this film goes much deeper than the original Alien did, but the original Alien has it all there and it sets it up. Who is the antagonist of this movie? It's the corporation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely. It's Weyland-Yutani Corp, and it's everything that they do. And this movie in particular, it's been said by the crew, and it's been said many times. I think it's in the featurette on the DVD, and in maybe the IMDb trivia, that this was like James Cameron was making a Vietnam film in making this movie. And very much so, the imperialists and the colonizers are heroes in this movie, and they are the ones that are being pushed back by, if the aliens then would be a stand-in for like Viet Cong, who is the real bad guy in this case. I mean, it's a complex movie in its simplicity in that way, and I think the aliens can be forgiven for wanting to survive. They're just
You don't see them fucking each other over for a percentage.
It's true.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to your point about James Cameron being a more thoughtful, intellectual director than I think he's sometimes given credit for, since he works mainly in the action genre. And this is a guy who's, he's always thinking thematically and has these linchpins that he sort of anchors his movie on. And in this, he was making a war movie, and he felt very strongly about this being a parallel of Vietnam, in that it was a superior, technologically superior force confronting an inferior force and losing, which was what he saw the Vietnam War as, and so this is the Space Marines coming in gung-ho. We got, Bill Paxton has this thing that was actually cut from the theatrical, but is in this extended version, where he says, we got everything from knives to nukes and, blah, 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 blah. We're going to kick this ass, blah, blah. They're dismissive about it being a bug hunt. And the first time they see these aliens, 3/4 of them get wiped out, because this is just an encounter that they can't handle.
I think the worst part about that is it does add a lot more, but they don't actually know what they're going to face, and it's a little confusing as to some of them don't seem to believe that the aliens are real, I think.
Well, there's arrogance there, and
Yeah.
that arrogance is extremely akin to, if we again we just are in the midst right now of the end of the occupation of Afghanistan and the failures that we've seen there. This is a theme in recent post-World War II American history.
And imperialism in general.
Imperialism in general, and also a sense of arrogance that, like, we've got this, it's easy, it's a cakewalk, no problem. And there's a quote in here where she's trying to describe Ripley, that is, the many different layers of the complexity of this villain, and how, difficult they are to kill. And Vasquez says, all I need to know is where they are.
and
Right.
points
You
her
know,
fingers
yeah.
like a gun.
So it's
it's
that
the
arrogance,
marriage of
right,
arrogance
it's
and
hubris.
ignorance, right?
It's
Yeah.
hubris completely.
when
And,
all you
that's
got
a
is
classic,
a hammer, everything looks like a nail,
right?
and this is what
and that's
they,
a classic hero character flaw, going back to the Greek literature thousands
Yeah.
of years ago. So yeah, he's brilliantly steeped, Cameron, that is, in these kinds of tropes, in these kinds of narrative tropes. And I absolutely agree with you that I think because of the kinds of films he's made, he is seen perhaps more bluntly than he's warranted.
That like sort of kill 'em all mentality from these soldiers too is very much akin to both Vietnam and the Afghanistan war mentality. So yeah, that goes hand in hand with what you're saying. Is like, let's not kill the bad guys. Let's just kill them all.
Right.
I don't care if they look different from me. They're dead.
What is it like? Kill them all and let God sort them out, or whatever.
Yeah.
That classic phrase.
An
But
ethos.
wait, I'm way off topic here, but I really want one of the coffee cups from this scene.
they're so impractical. They're like so wide. Why
Yeah.
would if things are supposed to get better in the future? Why would you start making coffee cups that are they're like martini glasses?
I
like
want
you really
one
want to be
so
spilling
bad.
hot coffee all over yourself.
It's made of glass too, which has bad like heat transference, I guess. So.
In fact, if you watch when he puts this down, I think he actually in one of the scenes where he picks it up or puts it down, Paul Reiser actually spills coffee all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, to Colin's point about the Marines not taking it seriously, when he says that when Bill Paxton complains and he says, "Hey Sarge, is this going to be a stand-up fight or another bug hunt?" The implication there is that there are other alien species that they have had to go and eradicate, and they are not.
They're similar to like
serious
pest control.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. These guys are basically exterminators.
Bad hombres.
He spilled some coffee.
Or tough hombres, they call them.
Yeah, tough
almost.
hombres.
They almost use the
Yeah.
the Trump phrase.
But the whole idea is that like they've probably traveled all over the galaxy as like high-priced exterminators, and they're just sick of this shit. And they just the fact that it's an alien makes them even worry about it less.
That's a key line, I think.
Yeah, that's one of my beefs with this movie. I almost prefer it if, I mean, we talked about it with the first one too, that like no one ever seems to be truly like blown away by the fact that they found like a living organism that it's not human in space or of this world.
In
But
the
they
Alien
never talk
franchise,
about.
we never see any other aliens.
Yes,
besides the
yes,
aliens.
exactly.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about a scene that we were doing a watch along. I'm sure your audience knows this, but I feel compelled to tell folks who are not able to see
We
into
never
the room
do
here.
that, sir, in the dark.
We're doing a watch along on mute here, but we're watching the special edition, which is the one I returned to. And another thing about James Cameron, and I'm again pretty much always a defender of his, he'll get dinged for his movies being too long often or bloat. Obviously huge budgets historically.
Most of us here on this show are lovers of long and boring films.
Colin,
Yes,
Colin
okay.
is a strong
Well,
advocate of longer and boringer the better.
I would not call this film boring. It's certainly long for its
Yeah.
genre, but we just watched a film that was cut out of the theatrical that I think I pretty much would go down the line and say all of the scenes that were cut out of the theatrical I think add to the experience absolutely in this film, in my opinion.
Okay,
one
we're
that
going
we
to get to my
just
hot
watched.
take in a second. Go ahead,
All right.
Jonathan.
Well, the one that we just watched, right, is the intro to the discovery of the derelict ship here that causes the whole
Events of
domino
the
effect,
movies.
right,
Yeah.
of the film. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it accomplishes so much in a relatively condensed time. It's a longish scene, but we meet Newt. We meet Newt's family. We get a sense of who will become this orphan child that is Ripley's, surrogate daughter. We get an enrichment of her need through the scene of learning about her daughter's death and all of this. And then we get that little like pirate kind of adventure that Newt's family goes on here. They're like, oh, they seem to think they're going to maybe find some kind of like booty or something on the ship, and it just gives you a little bit. You learn about the families that are volunteering to terraform here. What might their reality be like socioeconomically? It's a very interesting surface level, but question expanding, world building, expanding exploration into what kind of two-tiered societies might be like in this future. I think it's a really, really clever use of science fiction, opening up that world. I think it's a great thing, and that reveal of the father with the face hugger, super powerful stuff. I just think it's a great scene.
It also, that scene more than any of the other added scenes, explains something that was left unmentioned basically in the theatrical version, and it used to be a bone of contention for me, but now having seen this version, like you kind of understand more. It always seems like in the theatrical that Ripley arrives. They've been colonizing this planet for
50 years.
50 years or whatever. And
Coincidentally,
right? They run into the aliens, and it's never sort of explained. But in this, it's in this version, it's much clearer that because of her coming in contact and informing them of the aliens, that is why I think one of the grunts like says like, oh yeah, this family's like going to check out whatever. Like they were told to go check out.
That's basically the conversation you get about the two, random, office guys in the hallway at the colony, is that he sent colonists out from the directive of the company to investigate this spot on the grid.
Yep.
Hard disagree on all of this. Now, I grant you entirely that this is great texture, great world building. I appreciate it. I do enjoy seeing it as extra footage after the fact. In the actual film, you don't need to know that. You really don't need. I mean, you do find out later that Burke is the one who sent them to investigate. So the plot hole element of it, because even in the original version, she's got that moment where she confronts Burke and says, "You sent them out to investigate this. That's why this happened." So you do sort of cover up that plot hole. It's not obvious. It takes a rewatch to really put those puzzle pieces together. But for me, I feel like this is almost everything in this extended cut was, I'm not going to say it was cut for a good reason. They were trimming it for time. The studio said it has to come in at an hour and 30 something minutes max, or else we can't get multiple screenings per day in the theater. That was the
historically bad reason.
That was the historically bad reason for doing this. However, most of the stuff they chose to cut is stuff that is background texture that you don't need to appreciate the story of Ripley and her journey. And the story about it's in a lot of ways a story about PTSD, because to use that Vietnam parallel, Ripley has PTSD, Newt has PTSD. They're all sort of traumatized by these bad dreams, and that all gets filled in a lot contextually with the rest of the movie. You never missed a lot of that stuff when you saw it originally. This movie was incredibly popular and didn't have a lot of people complaining about plot holes originally. I would say the two exceptions to this, in my opinion, because I feel like this is the theatrical is actually, I think, a stronger film because it's much tighter, it's much more direct. The two things that I would acknowledge are really important that get left out is A, Ripley's daughter, the scene where we learn about Ripley's daughter being dead. It's a short scene. They should have left it in. And B, I do love the turret gun sequence, where they're counting. I don't know if we need all the setup of the turret gun, but I love the sequence where they're counting down the turret gun ammo. And this is the reason why they're safe, is they have these turret guns that are going to thwart this horde of aliens, but there's so many fucking aliens, it doesn't matter. And those are two scenes that I think they should have left in. But most of the other scenes that they cut out, including the colonists, I don't give it. My mind fills in the blanks.
Yeah, I tend to
it's
agree.
Good color, but it makes the movie kind of fat.
I have the question for everyone. How many of you, when you woke up this morning, immediately put a cigar in your mouth that you had in your hand when
Every
you went to
damn day.
sleep?
Oh, you know it. As a former, that guy was a real retired Marine drill sergeant. And this movie came out the same year as Full Metal Jacket, where another retired Marine drill sergeant made his acting debut. Kind of a weird parallel.
It was the year of the drill sergeant.
Yeah.
What can we say? But I just wanted to jump off what you said, that I think the machine gun turret scenes add to the movie because it adds to the threat of the alien that okay, and it shows how smart they are and how they think,
And also it's tension because you're getting this countdown, you have a clock.
Yeah. And I love that you don't ever really see it. You get that quick flash of an alien exploding kind of a thing, and that's it. However, the daughter thing I think is the one scene I'm happy that they kept out. I think it's a cool idea that, wow, she has this daughter who she never knew, and she's older than her and she's dead already. That's a fascinating science fiction concept that she aged slower than her daughter, right? But you don't need it in this movie, and it's never really addressed again. So it's this
That's
heartbreaking.
completely not true. It's addressed throughout the entire film. The theme of the film becomes about that surrogacy and that role and the motivator of Ripley. If we go with Harris's view that the film is about PTSD, that's kind of interesting and it's a little bit simple. But if it's a film that becomes much more about the family dynamic and especially in visions of maternity, maternity is laced as a kind of theme through this.
Right.
And what does that mean?
It's mother versus mother at the end of the movie.
Yeah, completely. That is
But
absolutely.
Did you need the scene
yes,
with her and her daughter?
Yes, it
Did you
is
need-
deeply enriching to that theme.
Enriching, but necessary.
highly
Because
disagree
you would
with
have,
you guys.
because everyone got that parallel when the movie came out in theaters without the scene of her
Yes.
missing
Ooh,
daughter.
what did you go and do a fucking interview with people at the goddamn movie theater line? Did you get this, or would you have needed this
No, but
deleted
people-
scene
no,
that you're not going to see for 10
People
years?
have been writing analysis of the movie since it came out, and all the analysis before the special edition came out
Source.
still had
Source.
Oh my god!
We all know that Harris has been using his time travel power to go back in time and try to make Conan 3.
I'm just saying it's
From
obvious.
time immemorial, viewers of Aliens have known that.
Her maternal relationship and the parallel between her protecting Newt and the queen protecting its eggs are obvious and have been obvious since the beginning. Without I mean, I don't argue. Like I said, I think it's one of this. I disagree with Matt in that I think it's a scene that works for me and should be kept in. But is it necessary? No. It's background color that fills in something that we can already see with our own eyes. If we're, do we need the movie to hold our hand and take us through everything? No. And also, just to the PTSD point, that's not just me coming up with that. That's
I'm not
something
saying it's you coming up with it.
Cameron said that in interviews several times, and that was one of his major
It's clear as
focuses of
day
this
in the movie. I'm not giving you
So
even
once
credit
again,
for coming
there's
up with it.
There's a
I'm
lot of
saying
things.
it's
There's a
clear.
lot of things in this movie that are clear as day, whether we have a scene where
Fine
she
and well.
mourns her poorly pixelated dead daughter or not.
I don't know. I do think there is a moment where Newt has already been captured by the aliens, and they're like ready to get away, and she's like very sure that she has to go back and try to get Newt. And I mean, there is only one guy in the android left, anyways. But like, if there were more people left, they'd be like, I don't know if we should go back for this one girl.
This little girl better cure cancer.
I mean, it's mean and it's bad, but I totally, you want Ripley to go back, I guess, without the scene or with the scene or whichever way, but still, like, I mean, it's a big deal that she went back at all.
Yeah,
she
you're
could have
right.
been like, no, she's probably already been face.
You're right, and the scene and the backstory with the daughter definitely sells that a little more. Is it absolutely necessary for you to get it? No, I don't think so. And I think the movie benefits from tightening up in places where, I mean, I'll be honest, the special edition is never boring, but it's fucking long. It is a slog at some points.
Just to defend what I'm saying, like as a parent, when I watch that scene, and then for the whole rest of the movie, she never like mentions the daughter or like seems upset or like reminiscent of a child she'll never see again. Like that scene feels shoehorned into me, and like. While I think it's an interesting concept, like I said before, I don't think the scene works, especially like it's one of the most dated scenes in the entire movie with the hologram and everything. Like, doesn't look cool, like
It does.
Wrong. It looks like a screen. It looks like
you haven't
she's in
hung
a
out in
room with a
you haven't
tree and
hung
a
out in a
bench
virtual
and a
park?
screen.
I thought. That's
What about the
during COVID.
conversation
I'm
with Newt?
happy that
where
scene's
Newt's
not
like,
in the
did you
movie.
ever have a daughter?
That was also cut from the original thing.
They
So
cut a lot of stuff that
Then-
enriches the film.
no,
I
I'm
totally disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm with Jonathan.
Enriches
That's
at
my
what
bad.
cost?
What? You just finished
Zero
telling
cost.
us that the movie is never boring, man. It's 17 minutes of stuff, but it's all the emotional underplay. This is what's unfortunate about this era of movies coming out of the 80s is, you had a lot of dumbing down of movies in this time.
What you're saying is that we should dumb it down even more and explain every
No,
little
dude,
thing in it, and don't make the
it
audience
allows
do any
a movie
work.
that is an action masterpiece on its face without any need of the emotionality to go deeper and to like treat the audience a little bit more maturely and to say these are complete people.
I think it's treating them more maturely to let them pull
Figure it
some of
out.
the subtext and not have it explicated directly to them at all times.
Well,
I
Jonathan's
definitely
right.
think-
Y'all are wrong.
I definitely think
Have to
deviating.
agree. Have to agree.
I agree with Jonathan.
I definitely think deviating from the main plot to talk about some colonists. The only time we break from Ripley to look at the colonists doesn't
The
really
main
fit in the
plot of the film is Ripley's redemption and healing as a person, and an enormous component of that is an emotional wholeness or completion that comes from exercising those demons. If Newt is just a random little orphan kid, it's a little bit less impactful.
But Newt
than-
is just a random little orphan kid, and that is just impactful enough.
She survived on this planet way longer than that.
Are you quoting the movie?
Yeah, of course.
Vasquez, have you ever been confused with a man?
No, have you? That's one of my
One
favorite
of the
lines.
greatest lines in any movie ever. And honestly, the Vasquez and Paxton characters, the Bill Paxton, what is he? what's his name, Hudson, and Vasquez are like the two highlights of this film. It's not a coincidence that they survive for almost longer than every other Space Marine.
That line is like has to be the greatest line delivered by a Jewish actor playing a Latino woman.
I like it when she says pendejo later. I just like the word pendejo.
Although I believe she is definitely Jewish, I think Russian originally, but I believe her family also has ancestry in South America. So who knows? Maybe she's not entirely, but she's definitely not entirely Hispanic.
I want to point out that we're watching right now the scene where we are introduced. What's the name of this machine? The mover or whatever?
Loader?
The loader
yeah.
that she
Yeah.
uses later. What a Chekhov's gun moment for this machine. It
yeah.
really gets its moment here with the sound effects, the sound cues. They show her strap in.
But-
it's a great plant for
But
what's gonna
I've
come
got a
later.
question about this. Okay, she has a class 2 rating, and then later she just like whoops the alien mother's ass with this thing.
Well,
there's
Maybe
got to
class
be
2 is the
higher
highest.
ratings. How
No,
good
may-
can
maybe
people
it's
get
class-
with this?
Maybe
Well,
class 2 is the highest.
What I
don't think
actually
so.
what I was actually interested in kind of
goes
to that
1 to
point
2.
is less her specificity of her license, although I think it's cool that they show her as a person she's not really meant to be obviously a Marine or anything like that. She will get into the guns later, but she has other skills like that I find very interesting. But
This is also like what she had to do when she
I was going to say,
right.
this is another thing
but
that got
what
cut
I wanted to say
her-
is that this takes place 57 years after she just went to sleep. So has this piece of machinery not changed
No.
in 60 years? And
No.
No.
Yeah.
This is what she had to do. So after she got out of the
Sure,
cryo
but,
bed.
Sure, but we're talking about this has been a 60-year gap in real time in
No,
the
but-
chronology.
No.
No,
This is
forget
what I'm
about the
saying.
60
This is what I'm
years.
saying. After she got out of the bed and she told the company, this is what happened. The company was like, well, you owe us like millions of dollars. The best job you can get now is loading crates. And that's when she got her class 2
Yeah.
rating on that thing.
There is a time lapse. There's a time lapse that's unclear between when she's unfrozen and when Burke finally gets her to go to the colony. It's
and
several
during
weeks.
that time, she
It-
was
yeah.
working a shit job loading
Exactly.
crates.
So
Is
they,
that
they
true?
have
that was never
Harris,
clear to me.
he won't get it unless there's a deleted scene explaining.
Please do.
That's cold.
Please
That's
unpack it.
cold.
sick burn.
How much time would you all say has elapsed in this moment?
It's implied that it's several weeks
implied?
because Burke says so first of all there's a deleted scene.
I could believe it as much as a year.
There, I would believe that too. But there's a deleted scene in that conference where they're disciplining her, where the guy says her pilot license is revoked. It's not even a deleted scene. It's a deleted line. He says that her pilot's license is revoked, and all she can do is work for blah 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 blah. And then Burke comes back to her later and says we've lost. Now we know it takes at least 2 weeks for them to communicate with the colony. So he's got at least 2 weeks for him to communicate to the colony to send
All
people
right.
out.
There's a piece of
And then
dressing that I missed then.
It's very it's not
it's
not
part of a larger thread. A point I wanted to make anyway, but so you can discard that aspect of it. But I find very interesting, as I kind of mentioned briefly in passing, a sense of certain technology in this film feeling very, very super futuristic and some of it feeling rather crude. You guys were just joking about the pixelated holograms. There's the scanners that they use for life later in the action sequences where they can't tell a cat apart from a alien and they don't know if it's above them or below them or anywhere around them. Unreliability of tech.
The screens in the flying
There's
machine.
many such examples of that. And then you have something like Bishop, which is like remarkably advanced. And the idea of how that all kind of very subtly talks about the values of different kinds of tech in this society. I thought, to me, that was a sense of like Ripley used the same.
She's wearing sunglasses in space. Sorry, continue.
Right? Yes, sunglasses
just to
in
look
space.
cool. That's
they
just
do
to
make
look
her
dope.
look pretty cool.
Wait, if you're in space, are they sunglasses or are they star glasses?
Good
So
point.
true.
Good point.
Also, I'm pretty sure that woman is Lady Gaga. Like, she looks exactly like her.
She's
Like-
a little similar to Lady Gaga.
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Not as good an actress.
Oh, wait, which one?
the one who just talked.
Oh, the one in Aliens.
Yeah,
I
the
thought
one
you
in
were
Aliens.
saying Lady Gaga wasn't as good an actress as this woman.
I feel like that would have been a hot take.
Yeah, that would have been a real hot take.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing about futuristic movies, the one thing that they all get wrong, is none of them seem to have anticipated a graphical user interface. When we've had television, we had we had animation, we had all these things, and they all have this very, rudimentary. I mean, maybe there's just no way to. It's kind of a tough thing to anticipate.
2001 does.
Oh, that's true.
So it's not like obviously we can only guess how many times James Cameron had seen that film before making this, in the dozens, probably. So it's a choice.
The most dated things about this and Star Wars and a lot of other movies
many
there's these 8-bit,
sometimes
Mac.
it's film technology VFX limitations, right?
Sure.
Other times I think it's a creative choice or a creative decision.
I mean, the weaponry in this is very
sci-fi is
sophisticated.
always about our here and now, pretty much always, right?
Yeah.
Transposed into some time in the future. So those choices and what they're talking about, and it's quite interesting to look at a character like Bishop and the emotionality that he is afforded as a narrative tool, and that he feels like a sensitivity to how he's referenced. If you refer to Bishop as a synthetic person, that's a PC term, but if you refer to him as an android, then he's ashamed, or
It's a slur.
yeah, it's a slur. That's super interesting stuff. But then we get a lot of technology that's really crude. The beginning of the movie, just like the original Alien, we meet the tech before we meet the human life. We see that machine that saws through the door and bursts in, and it's really simplistic.
The lasers scanning through the fog.
It's just like Terminator. It moves really
Is this the
crude.
first movie that did the lasers in the fog thing? Because I feel like there's a lot of iconic
Probably
moments
not.
in this movie.
Yeah.
And that one
That's
is one that
gotta
I
be.
always think of when I think of this movie. The laser cutting through a slice of fog, and you can see the fog moving through it.
Well, they
It's
do
so
that in the
crazy
first
looking.
Alien movie too.
Right, and I think it's one of those iconic Alien looks that now has been copied by everything. It's so interesting.
Well, we all know you guys love Short Circuit, the movie. That's
of
for
course.
sure.
Yes.
I think at this point we have to talk about the fact that Halo, the video game, just straight stole a bunch of the look of this movie.
Yeah, right down to the vehicles and stuff too.
Really just ripped it off. How did they get away with that?
But not the space helmets for some reason. They went with a full face.
Never played that game.
Well, no, but the Marines,
cannot help you.
the Master Chief, the main character, the antagonist of the protagonist of the Halo video games, he has a full helmet, but all his little buddies look exactly like this guy. Yeah, there's not a bunch of Master Chiefs.
Obviously, I've never played the game either.
No, they ripped it off
Vaguely
really bad.
I do think all the weaponry and the body armor and stuff like that is it's not completely 100% nailing it, but it's definitely speculative future fiction.
Oh.
You can buy all this stuff, that this would be I remember my dad saying, explaining to me that no, you can't have a machine gun with a grenade launcher attached to it. And also, that's not really how flamethrowers would work in this situation and all this other army shit. And still, he loved this movie because it was
But here's something: having each soldier having a camera and a sensor on them.
Yep.
That's very much real tech.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say that even though, yes, I agree with both those points, the technology, again, with the guns, it's very rooted in what we know today. If this is about 150 years in the future, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, something like that.
To our timeline. You might think, okay, perhaps there was a great leap forward in weapons technology, but it's pretty much bullets and grenades. It's
But the advancement in the rounds is
Sure.
that's why because these are rounds that basically pierce everything.
right. But for a
it's
society that's conquered, interstellar travel and has completely passable.
They could be
androids.
lasers.
I
It
praise them.
could be
I
lasers.
praise
It
them
could
for not
be-
assuming that we're going to have laser guns because lasers make
not a knock, not a
are-
criticism
yeah,
at all.
exactly.
It's an interesting choice
I think exactly what
Yeah.
you're saying. I think it's an interesting choice that they made to say we're not going to be Star Wars in the future. We won't have lasers. We will have guns that will just be much better guns.
All of this
Badass
makes
guns, right.
for a really great moment when they're told they can't use their good guns because they might blow up the whole facility. So, what's his name? John Connor's father.
Flames only. Michael Biehn.
Pulls out an old timey shotgun
Yeah.
and says, "I keep this for close encounters," which is a reference to another movie about aliens that is not similar.
It's a great line. We also missed a great line when we're talking about the loader scene when she picks up a crate and turns around and she's like, "Where should I put it?" Or where I love that line.
Where do you
too.
want this?
Where do you want this? That's
Is
it.
it a subtextual joke about pegging? He's Michael Bean's right here.
You know James Cameron. James Cameron likes those strong women characters.
Bay number 2.
Whether it is or not, it's still a great line.
And those loaders, they actually got requests from construction and warehouse companies for like, where can we buy these loaders, which are now actually things that they do use, sort of these like sort of hydraulic arm things to move stuff. But at that time, this was all done with like paper mache and stuntmen, like, and it looks so fucking good.
What's each of our favorite line? Mine has to be like, nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
That is a great one.
Not bad for a human.
Yeah.
It is undoubtedly the signature line. I think we all know it, and I don't want to blow the wad on it too early, but it's the big payoff, man. It's the big Ripley poster line, the classics,
The one with the word bitch in it.
Get away from her.
I thought you were driving
get
it.
away from her, you bitch. That's just like, come on, man.
I don't know. Probably wasn't the first time I saw this movie. I know it was the joke about, have you ever been mistaken for a man?
That's one of the more clever lines. That's great.
But honestly, I think it's all of mine would probably be Paxton lines. I think
Game
they're all
over,
great.
man.
The
Game over,
Game
man
over
is
became an
classic.
iconic line.
Yeah.
But
It's
like,
in the video game.
I'm sure it wasn't my favorite the first time I saw this movie, but since then is now like, that one's the one that I just think about when I think of this movie. Game over, man.
There's
over.
plenty of good ones littered throughout, but if it's not get away from her, you bitch, you're doing something wrong.
Count me out. I love his like wimpy line.
You know what I love about Paxton's lines too is he kind of transfers the relationship he had with the drill sergeant over to Ripley.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
And this is what the brilliance of Cameron's script and direction and everything. He actually, so Sigourney Weaver was really resistant to come back and reprise his character. She really loved the first movie. She thought it was sort of its standalone thing. And she had refused several offers to come back and wouldn't even
Nominated for Best Actress.
Yes, and wouldn't even read the script. Didn't want to do Alien sequels. Wasn't interested in bringing Ripley back. Cameron had in his head, he had written the script about Ripley. This was a Ripley story. The other one was kind of an ensemble where Ripley elevated herself. This one was Ripley.
He made her the action
He made
hero.
her the hero.
Yeah.
And this is a movie about her. And he actually had said, and this is a guy who was still very early in his career. He had made one big hit with Terminator.
This goes against your point that women don't like this movie, by the way.
My
no,
wife
that was
loved
Jonathan's
this.
point.
No, it was
Oh,
not.
no, that was Matt's point.
Do not put
Sorry.
that evil on me.
I was gonna
did
say-
not say that
I
at
was
all.
going to say, I think women do. I think this is an action movie that women actually like.
I would like to, in fact, evoke my wife in here because we watched it together recently, and she reacted very strongly to the film. She's seen it before, of course, but there's a lot to connect, I think, to women here in the way in which they're, that femininity can be power in this movie. Anyway, we can get to that later.
Yeah, and I said earlier, I'm not sure if women like this movie as much as we do.
Very qualified statement. So
Matt reading back what he said as
we
if he
four
wrote it
fellas
down.
here
Very
in the
nice.
room, or
Yeah.
the male.
Okay.
We in this room.
But
Okay.
Cameron had written this movie, and he was getting a lot of offers at this point. He'd done a script. The reason he got this is because he'd written The Terminator, which was great, and he had written the script for Rambo 2. So everyone was like, "This guy can write." So he had an offer to write this script. He wrote half of it, and then he actually ended up having to shoot The Terminator. And he said, "I'm sorry, I can't finish the script." He sent them 90 pages. They were like, "Well, wait, this is great. You're the guy." And the idea was, if The Terminator did well, he would get to direct this. So that's sort of the backstory of how he got this gig. After after they're like, "Okay, we want you to direct this," but Sigourney Weaver won't read the script and doesn't want to come back, he said, "I'm walking." He said, "I won't do it if Sigourney Weaver doesn't play." And then he got nervous. He set a deadline, and he said, if she doesn't read the script and say yes by this date, I got to move on and do another project. And the date came, and she hadn't said anything, and he got a little nervous. So he told Arnold Schwarzenegger, who he had worked with in The Terminator, he said, "Arnold, Sigourney Weaver isn't going to do this aliens thing, so I'm going to rewrite the character for you." And then Arnold told his agent, and then his agent told somebody, and then somebody else told somebody else, and it got back to the studio, who was like, "Holy shit," put pressure on Sigourney to read the script, and then she read it, loved it, and signed on. But part of it was that it was all about making her, and she is the driving force of this entire script. Hicks is like a badass Marine, and he's the male hero and whatever, and when I was a little kid, all I wanted to be was Hicks. If you watch this, Sigourney Weaver, Ripley is making all the decisions. She's even the one who says, let's nuke it from space. And then when Burke tries to overrule her, she's like, well, Hicks is in charge. And you can see the look on Hicks's face. He's just trying to keep up. He's like, oh, I am? Well, let's just do what she said. Like, just like the beta cuck he is.
Yeah, but also in that scene, I think 8 to 10 of the people that Hicks knows best have just been murdered in front of him. So it's kind of tough to, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, he is totally taking her lead. She becomes the leader of these badass Marines like that, you know?
Right.
So I don't know as much about the backstory as you just told, but a little bit I mentioned I had seen some parts of this making of documentary of the film, and there was an interview I found this very interesting with Sigourney Weaver where she talks about how different this film was than the original, both in its scope and its size and its budget, but also specifically, again, the tonal shift from something that's like a claustrophobic small horror film to a big sweeping kind of action set piece movie. She hates guns, and apparently this has been a big thing of hers. She is talking in this interview in 1986, 35 years ago, about how much she was a big donor to anti-gun movements and anti-gun legislation way back then. Reading it, of course, guns are littered throughout the thing, but she said it wasn't until she arrived on set that she realized how martial was the term that she used, how martial this film was, and that the set was going to be, and how much of a role the weaponry was going to be, and she felt quite uncomfortable with that. I found that very interesting, and that she even talked about using the guns and the props, and how it kind of made her feel like powerful and good, and she hated that. She had like a very kind of ambivalent,
it's
a very
that she used
ambivalent feeling toward it. So I found that quite interesting, but. I
She
want
didn't
to
bring
ask
any of
you
it up.
if you
She
know
just-
about.
She like this wasn't like a thing that she brought up. This was like her just talking about it afterwards.
No, it was like those interviews were done on set.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it must have been very top of mind at that time. But I wanted to ask you, Harris, because you seem to know quite a bit about this backstory. The apocryphal, perhaps it's not true, story of James Cameron pitching this to the studio, writing Alien on the whiteboard.
We've talked about this on the show.
Is this indeed true?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't honestly, I don't know if I think Cameron's told the Schwarzenegger story about planting the thing with Schwarzenegger.
That I had never heard.
But I don't know if that could be apocryphal. I mean, it's basically he said it, so we will only know
About
because of that.
Schwarzenegger?
About pitching it to Schwarzenegger as rewriting it for him, even though he never intended to do. He was going to walk. He had no intention of making this movie with Schwarzenegger.
Right.
He was saying, I make Aliens with her, or I don't make it. But privately, he knew that if he had told Schwarzenegger, that might light a fire under some other people to get it made.
Interesting.
However, the dimension where that version of this movie exists is a fucking awesome dimension.
Very different film.
I'd be curious.
good, I would say, but very
couldn't
good.
be as good.
It would never be.
No,
Couldn't be
definitely
as
not.
good.
Never.
As much as
I would not believe it could
As
be
much as we
good.
all know, I love Arnold. But
Eat lead, aliens.
It would be a very different movie,
Yeah.
just for having that in it.
And then we wouldn't have Predator.
So funny with the
That would be starring Sigourney Weaver.
Predator.
You ugly motherfucker!
This movie is so much like Predator in many ways, like because of the team of military
battalion
ops.
of badasses
Yeah.
who go out and encounter something they weren't prepared for. Yeah. I think it's funny too how limited they were for this. This movie had a sizable, it's $18 million budget. And it made, almost 200 million on that. So a very good return.
18 seems like less than it would cost to me.
Right. You would think so. Right. And, one of the things that was funny is how limited they were with some things. They would only give them, they wanted to have 100. The first movie is one alien and this movie is hundreds. And they would only give them 6 suits. They said, we have the funding for 6
According
suits.
to him on the featurette,
Yeah.
I did see that on the DVD. He said he promised the studio that he only needed 6 suits.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's
So that's
again,
like
a
a lot
very
of,
clever filmaker understanding, editing.
The
Quite
hordes,
simply.
of, the hordes of
Understanding
aliens
filmmaking better
attacking
than the studio.
or when they're surrounded, when the Marines first go down into the hive and they're surrounded from all sides, he knew he never needed more than 6 in the frame at any time to make it seem like there were hundreds just attacking them nonstop. And it did, they pull it off. They do it great.
And some of them are less detailed than others. Like some you could tell are just a mask of like the mouth open where it's like, especially there's one shot at the end when she's in the egg room. Where you see an alien and it's clear that it's just a mask. And then I'm sure there's others that are
they also had like
animatronic.
puppets, and they had a lot of the stuff was apparently I read that when they first showed this to the studio, and they could only show it about like 7 days before it premiered because they were that close to the deadline of editing it, and they showed it at the studio. Studio loved it, but they had said originally that they felt like they spent too much money on the sets and not enough money on the actual alien costumes. They were like, we didn't see enough of the aliens, and we saw all these incredible giant sets. And James Cameron had to tell his miniature people, hey, they loved your sets, because most of the sets in this are actually miniatures. There aren't any big sets. They're all kind of small scale. They shot it at Pinewood, but they're all like small scale sets. They're not huge things.
That's cool.
Another thing from that DVD featurette is him talking about the notion of not showing so much of the alien. And of course, you know, Jaws, I think, predates so much of this stuff as far as understanding, right, understanding what you do and don't need to show. But even the original Alien film does kind of fetishize the body of it more, and is so much that H.R. Giger work is so indelible to kind of the effect of this movie. But he said he was much more interested in making costumes that acrobats and people like this, stunt people, could move in very, very fluidly, and that he knew you never needed to have that for more than a few seconds. And he talks about like literally the amount of pixels that the human eye needs to see to register information. And again, the intellectual nature of him as a filmmaker, an underrated aspect, I think, of his tool belt. But he's absolutely right. You know, the motion and the speed and the blur and the sense of just, oh my God, you know, if I turn away and then I look back, they'll be right on top of me. Is just such a powerful aspect of this movie, and the terror of that is so much more deeply evocative than something
sound
like
helps, and also the sound of like machine guns going off like helps too. It just sounds like
nothing, hitting nothing, shooting wildly. Totally, absolutely.
Well, in the first movie, they had a 7 foot tall actor because they wanted the alien to be intimidating, so they put a big, skinny 7 foot tall guy in the suit, and he had never acted before. He wasn't a dancer or an athlete or anything. He was untrained. And honestly, one of my big criticisms, and one of the reasons that I think Alien is a great movie, but I think it's inferior to this in a few ways. And one of them is that not a lot, but occasionally there are, especially when the hand sticks out and holds there, that the alien just looks like a guy in a suit, or when it gets blown out of the airlock, like no guy in a suit. But you know, in this movie, they focused, I think partly for practical reasons. They weren't sure they could find 7 foot tall skinny actors, 6-7 foot tall skinny actors, but also because how he knew he was going to shoot them crawling through air ducts and stuff, he wanted to emphasize them having an animalistic movement. So he hired dancers and acrobats and put them in regular sized suits, and knew that for perspective, you weren't going to see them in the frame with people a lot. And it works. It works. This is, I think, in my opinion, this is the best the aliens look in the entire franchise. I think in Alien 3, there's some puppetry and some digital stuff, and it definitely looks different. I think it always looks good. It's always impressive. But these are my favorite aliens.
I think the quintessential example is when they're in the ceiling and they don't realize they're in the ceiling, but then Hicks sticks his head up through the ceiling and he sees them like
terrific,
at a
crawling
very
upside down.
close,
crawling upside down, all different directions, and it's so good. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah,
they also look like they're buddies, you know, like that the aliens get along.
They're in a gang.
Yeah.
There's the shot when one bursts out of the water. I think that looks really cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Great.
And also they put their money into the Queen, which looks amazing. We haven't talked about the Queen.
Which is entirely a puppet.
What a sequence. The reveal, that's just A1 filmmaking. That moment is just so beautiful.
You mentioned H.R. Giger, which I'm going to use your pronunciation because I've heard other people pronounce it like
Puffin
that.
Stuff.
Even though every other single name that's spelled that way is pronounced Geiger, including the guy who invented the counter.
What, Swiss?
I think he's German. Oh, Swiss.
No, I think
Swiss.
he's
They
Swiss,
speak German in Swiss.
They speak a few
Switzerland.
languages
We'll go with
including
Giger. Was not invited to consult on the new Alien models.
But you should read Cameron's letter to him, which is one of my favorite freaking things. Have you guys seen this?
Give me the gist of it.
Oh gosh, basically it's a complete like, you are a god king. I'm fucking in awe of you, and you're just epic and have shaped these movies so strongly that I must not work with you, because I could not do anything with an original idea in my head if I worked with you, because you're so powerful.
And also he was on Poltergeist 2 at the time, so they would have had to wait for him, and they didn't want to do that.
I did not know that.
Combination of things.
But
if you
take the letter at face value, it really does feel like an earnest thing of like, it's such a powerful singular vision that like I could not separate from that, and I would not have autonomy over a vision here, and he does do things quite differently, as we're saying here, and evaluation of what makes them interesting, monsters.
I heard-
I was hoping that you would say the letter like digresses unnecessarily. Like, my coffee was a bit cold today, and I burnt the toast. HR.
That's page 3.
It's like-
Page
Like,
three.
I dressed
It goes on like this
Yeah.
for some time.
There's a director's cut of the letter as well. Studio cut.
Apparently,
It
Giger
explains
was
so much more.
apparently Giger was a little butthurt about not being asked, but then when he saw the movie, he was very.
fine with this movie.
Yeah, he had high praise for the production designers who actually did the work, and that was like the Queen was like taking the principal concepts of the alien that
His
he had
fingerprints
designed.
all over it, in
Exactly.
spite of
You can't
the fact.
act like it's not
Right,
it's not
right.
part of his.
He saw the underside of the face hugger and how they made it look entirely like a vagina in this, and he was like, "I am pleased."
Nailed it. There's a lot of penises and vaginas throughout. That's all I ask. Oh, you people understand my work. It's all genitals.
Jonathan, the doc that you were watching, did you get to the part? I watched this years ago, but I remember them in one of the documentaries on the DVD here that it says that they shot this in the UK, and James Cameron is such a workhorse. He's so used to working like 15, 16-hour
The mythology
days.
of James Cameron is
Oh, I know. And he's like a
Tremendous.
notorious prick, right?
Well, no, even 12-hour, because we work 12-hour shifts in the U.S.
But in the UK,
Apparently
he
in
was
the UK.
baffled that they have like tea time and everyone would like stop working for like an hour or two or
They
whatever.
dip out to the bar for a couple hours.
Yeah,
then
and
It's
he
called
was-
the pub.
the
Yeah,
pub,
sorry,
right,
pub.
for a pint. And he was so miffed by this that I think the story goes that like on the last day when they wrapped, he like got up and gave a speech. And at first he started saying like, "Guys, this has been great" or whatever. And then he kind of quickly segues into like, "But you were the most unprofessional like group of jerks that I've ever worked with, and I will never work in the UK again." And they're all like, "Ah!" like screaming,
Well, they hated him from the beginning, and the actors said this too. Michael Biehn and Bill Paxton have both said that the crew was averse to working, but they were. If you shoot at Pinewood at that time, and I don't know if they still do, they might, had its own crew. Basically, if you shot at Pinewood, you
had to
shot
use-
with a Pinewood crew. It was like their own little union, but part of their union was they didn't work. I think they work like 10-hour days or less. They have like multiple built-in breaks. So it's like the union here, except the union here is, 2 15-minute breaks, an hour lunch, and you work 12-hour days, and there's lots of opportunities to work them much more than 12 hours if you're willing to pay the penalties. And in Europe in general, like French crews, I think don't even. It's like working with
We're
child
gonna have
actors.
to start to get into IATSE Stories Instagram account going viral right now. Talk about the work conditions in this country. I want to say we just are, again, with the watch along here, we just passed another one of the great lines for me in this movie, which is when Ripley is trying to, cajole Newt into not fearing that they're going to go back up there, and these Marines are really tough and they're super well trained. They've got all these weapons. She just goes, "Won't make any difference."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so fucking creepy.
From the
so
mouths
eerie.
of babes.
Yeah, like really. And then the great immediate smash cut into the dissection of the facehugger. And as you pointed out, that kind of fawning over it that Bishop has,
Yep.
like loving just life and the complexity of life and it's the evolutionary nature of these
It's
animals.
a great performance
It's
from Lance Henriksen.
so great. And I really was struck by it this time watching it more than I ever had been in the past. Beautiful casting. He just feels like a cyborg.
and they're trying to make you feel like he is the Ash of this movie because
Right,
Ash in the
right.
first
Yes.
movie
Total
called it a perfect
goating.
organism, and he was like you said, fawning over it, like just in
Brilliance
awe.
of the performance is that you can rewatch it knowing that he's a good guy, and it seems obvious.
Yeah.
But when you rewatch it, thinking, "Oh,"
It exposes your own bias.
exactly
As it does, as
exactly.
Ripley kind of
Yeah.
sets up.
It's such
and
a
the
fine
movie's
line
very
to play
clever
it both
that way.
ways.
Yeah,
to be able
absolutely.
to play it as he's a bad guy if you've never seen it before, but he's a good guy if you know what's up, and he's just very robotic, and that's just who he is. He actually said that he was going to retire from acting if this movie wasn't good, because
Glad that
he had come out and was a young actor who had done some small roles in some bigger movies and seemed like he was having success as a young man. And then he got into this thing where he was trying to move into bigger roles. Nothing was working. He had been doing TV for like 5 years where he was just doing guest spots on like, I don't know, TJ Hooker or something. I don't fucking know what was on then, but like that kind of thing where he was like the bad guy of the week. And then he got cast in this, and I think he got cast in, he followed this up with that Catherine Bigelow movie, vampire one.
Near Dark.
Yes, and but like this was the movie that he was like, if this doesn't make it, I'm just done. Like I can't get a decent role, and maybe this isn't for me. And of course, this sort of between this and Near Dark the next year launches careers, and Johnny Handsome, I think 2 years later. So, and that sort of set up who he is.
It's my nickname.
We haven't summarized the plot, and we're like a full hour.
Oh yeah, who's in charge of summarizing this plot? Is it you?
It's me. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm surprised you called your own number there, but all right, let's do it.
All right, cool.
Are you going to summarize the?
I get a little bit from column A.
Column A. So this is the plot of possibly Alien and possibly Aliens, the theatrical, and possibly some Aliens, the extended cut. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Go.
Okay, so we start off, and Ripley's escape pod from the first movie is intercepted by a much larger ship, the Sulaco. Or I don't know if that's the Sulaco at that point, but it's a much larger ship. And she's brought to a space station where she finds out that she's been in cryosleep for 57 years, and everyone she knew in her life is long dead, including her daughter, which we only find out in the special edition. Very quickly, she finds out that the planet LV-426 is colonized by people. There are families living there. And also now there's been an alien outbreak. And so Ripley has to go, as per Burke, the corporate ghoul of this movie. He makes her go with the Marines. He promises her she'll be safe because these guys have big guns and they don't give a fuck. So they go back to the planet. And of course, everyone is dead. There's nothing there. They find a little girl named Newt, and they make their way through the site, trying to find the aliens. Eventually, they find them, and most of them get killed. They are no match for the aliens, and one by one, they get killed off. And Ripley has to protect Newt at all costs. In the end, Newt falls down a hole or whatever, and Ripley has to, after everyone's dead except for Ripley, basically, she has to go back and save Newt, and she finds the queen alien, the thing that lays the eggs. She destroys most of the eggs and runs away with Newt, just in time for Bishop to arrive with the ship to save her. But little does she, or I guess eventually she finds out that the queen followed her, and now little does she know, it like latches onto the ship somehow, and they go back to the Sulaco, where they think it's the end of the day, and they've won. And then the queen rips Bishop in half, and Ripley gets into a big mech suit and has a fight with the queen, and she blows it out of the airlock. And that's the end of the movie. Her and Newt and Hicks and Bishop live happily ever after, although Bishop is
forever,
ripped in half.
Nothing bad ever happens to them ever again.
Right, exactly. They live happily until the next movie.
At least half of Bishop does.
Right.
Yeah, that was good. I think my only criticism would be that you glossed over, a good hour of this movie between the time when half the platoon or more than half the platoon gets wiped out by the aliens and then they actually make their escape. There is a lot of sitting around waiting because they've tried various things. They have to get off the planet. They call the ship crashes. Then they've got to find a new way to remote pilot the ship down, but now the reactor's going to blow, so they have to get off the planet in 4 hours.
I like to get down to the nuts and bolts of the plot.
I think what this is really isolated is how unimportant all that stuff was. It's kind of like filler in the middle of the movie just to throw obstacles in their path. I don't want to say it's filler to fill out the runtime.
It's good
because
suspense.
It's interesting stuff and it's suspenseful and there's
Harris is tipping his cards that he really wants to see the 28-minute cut of this movie. I guess that has nothing but the Queen. I don't know
Listen,
what's
Jonathan. There's not a
important to
movie
you.
that's ever been made that wouldn't be improved by having a 90-minute
Yeah,
version
you
of
clearly
it.
have been working in the production company's realm too long, my friend.
Yeah. No.
Harris turned out the world's first 3-minute 508.
Listen, the 2 hour the 2 hour plus version of this movie is great. I wouldn't change a thing. I just think it's in terms of what actual things of substance that are really important that happen. There's a whole section in the middle after they meet the aliens, encounter them, get wiped out, and before they start their escape. That is basically just like a screenwriter thinking of how can I fuck with them a little bit before I get to the third act,
Just so the audience is aware about Jonathan. Jonathan is a man who watched The Irishman and said that's it?
Four times, baby.
3 hours.
4 times, and I'm always waiting for the next time I'm going to watch that movie. It gets better every time, by the way.
That's all we get?
And I feel like that was a movie that I had to watch in 3 separate sittings and really enjoyed,
Guys, your brains have been rotted by like
I
Game
really
of Thrones.
enjoyed
I don't know
watching
what the
it
fuck is wrong
as
with
a
you guys.
miniseries. I just think some things are better in kind of long form. And most of the things that you like about the extended cut are like world building stuff and atmosphere stuff that I think would be great if they turned Aliens into a miniseries, and like if they were God forbid sacrilegiously going to remake this on Netflix, I would say yeah, sure, make it 6 episodes and fill out all, like I want a whole episode just on the fucking colonists, go ahead, dive in. But for a feature film, especially an action movie, there are limits.
Harris, just going off of what you said, how you think that the aliens look the best in this movie, I think I'm basically there with you. I think some of the 6 suits that we're talking about like look a little goofy in some parts,
But you never see them for more than a flash.
Yes, but I will, and I know I have said that the Queen looks great in this movie, but I will also say that the face huggers have never looked better in this movie. Both dead and alive, moving, like they just do it all in this movie.
Oh, I have a question about that. In the first movie, the eggs clearly contain more of a translucent liquid, and in this, it's more like a yogurt.
So like robot blood.
They're
Actually,
always different. They always kind of change that up in the movies.
Comic book guy has entered the chat.
I think it's partially because they don't keep the same crew for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't, like, they had the crew that had to recreate the set of the ship from the first movie because they didn't have any of the original parts. We're just doing it by watching the first movie and trying to recreate it.
This
the chest
scene
burster
looks
looks
awesome.
great.
This scene is incredible. We're watching the chest burst moment from here. That's something that Cameron changed as well, according to what I watched again today. The
that puppet. Looks
arms on
great.
the chest
Yeah.
burster. He wanted it to be less larva-like and more akin to what the alien grows into being.
Yeah.
So showing its arms and its ability to like rip itself out of the body. Little details like that. I mean, he's, again, I sing his praises a lot here, but he's just the attention to detail in the midst of doing great sweeping set pieces is really impressive to me.
I had watched Escape from New York recently, and I was on Wikipedia just like reading about it, the making of that movie. And James Cameron actually worked on the special effects crew, and he was like some kind of a DP. He wasn't the DP of that movie, but I think for special effects, he was some kind of a camera person or something like that. But as the story goes with that movie is that this is before he had, or I don't know if he had directed Piranha 2 at this point. That was his first movie.
Mm-hmm.
But people just knew that this guy was going to be something. He was like a wonderkin kind of person.
You hear that so many times when people talk about him, that like in the room, when he was pitching, when he was working with people, even before he was anybody, everyone except for the British crew he worked with at Pinewood Studios were just like, holy shit, this guy's going to be a star.
Well, you guys, of course, remember Bruce Block, our great teacher from USC, who I think was one of the best professors we had there, and
Yes,
illustrious career he had as a visual. What's even his title? I forget. He's had many over his career, but consultant on tons of huge films. And I asked him at one point on set, who's the greatest filmmaker you ever worked with? Because there's so many. And he thought about it for only about a moment, and he said it has to be Jim Cameron. And he worked on Terminator. He did matte painting for Terminator 1. And he said even then, on Terminator 1, he's like, you could just see this guy knew fucking everything. Everything. And he knew every shortcut. He understood like how he was going to create this great sweeping futurescape on like pennies.
And what happened to him? He just became the most successful filmmaker of
we've
all
ever
time.
had.
The
Right,
biggest,
exactly.
money
Continuously
maker in
cutting
history.
edge.
A
Continuously cutting
real
edge. But
titan
again,
of the industry.
I will double down that it is because of the ability that he has to have emotionality tied into that stuff that separates him from others, and it comes at the expense of things like, oh, it's a little bit long, but I mean, whatever, you can laugh it off, but I think it's a key to his success.
Kind of like he's king of the world.
I mean, listen, Titanic's unwatchable, and if they cut like
It's
a
unwatchable. It's only the most watched movie of all time, but it's unwatchable according to a dude on a podcast here.
Yeah. No, I love that. Like for all this time, we talked about James Cameron so much, and I'm the only one referencing Titanic, and like you guys.
I also hate Avatar and can't believe that he's spending so many years of his career making a bunch of sequels to that movie. But honestly, everything else he's done has been amazing. So it's
to Jonathan's point too, like I'm a little weary of like all this Avatar stuff too, but at the same time, like I'm very excited to see because the man hasn't failed yet, especially with sequels.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's like, what is up
If,
his sleeve?
if there's something up there where he's like, I don't need to revisit this world once, I need to revisit this world 4 fucking times.
Yeah.
There's something there that's gonna be dope as hell.
I don't know.
Guaranteed.
Let's hope so.
Guaranteed.
Let's hope so.
And I liked but did not love Avatar like I do some of his other work.
Yeah.
But I think it's super interesting comparatively to like
It's
a lot of this other
interesting.
tentpole
Yeah.
stuff that we
Yeah.
have. I mean, Jesus Christ, give me 75 Avatars before another Marvel movie, if you ask me. So wait and bet. As Matt says, bet against him.
Yeah, well,
Bet
no,
against him at your own
I
risk.
would never bet against him because if nothing else, he's got a track record of incredible success, even for the movies that I don't love. Those are more successful than the movies that I do love, you know? Yeah, he's definitely, and also his screenplays are really.
He's a super underrated screenwriter.
Oh yeah, no, he is a great screenwriter, and if you've ever read Aliens, I mean, it's almost, it seems like it should be a hard read because he writes action in giant blocks of text, but the action is so concise in those blocks of text, you can see everything that's happening. But more than that, screenplays are basically like. They're like giant puzzles, and when they're perfect, every piece fits into its right place. And
That
like
is
you were
what he's a
talking,
master of.
you were talking earlier about the loader scene and how this is her impressing these Marines and showing that she's valued, whatever. But it also functions as a like it's perfect because it's a plant for the finale, but it's also a character moment, you know. And that's everything in his script works that way. There's very few things that are just plants that aren't also developing some broader theme or character element. That's what he does, and it's so hard to do as a screenwriter, and he does it in all his scripts, you know?
Yeah, I would say we're all pretty confident about him. There is a little bit of a worry that too much Avatar might give us the blues.
He literally had his hand
Is
up.
there a
He was
price of
raising his hand
Is there a price of right sound effect that we can put for the
He
loser,
was
the loser
raising
horn
his hand
in the
like he was in
post-production? here?
class so he could make that pun. Wrong. Brought to you from the Brain of Colin Shaw audience. This is what you tune in for.
Groans abound.
I wanted to say
Amazing.
it so bad.
Amazing.
We felt it. The energy shifted in the room. Just then.
Also, this is where we're seeing this moment where Ripley really takes over. This is like she has been kind of riding along okay with, you know, trying to find her place in this team because she's not a Marine. She's not one of these experts. She's certainly not a company man. And she has been just along for the ride. And then when the Marines get trapped because their captain doesn't know what he's doing and is a joke who everyone kind of knew he was incompetent, and she is back with Burke and the captain and Newt, and the Marines get trapped and they're boxed in, they can't escape, and she takes it upon herself to drive their armored vehicle, which is this badass tank, to rescue them. And from here to the rest of the movie, she's in charge. She's the boss of the Marines. Basically, everyone defers to her. She puts Hudson in his place.
Why don't you put her in charge?
Yeah, exactly. And then eventually, when he starts freaking out again, she goes, "I'm sick of your shit, Hudson. We need you. Shape up." And it's like, and he's just like, "Okay, yes, sir."
Yeah.
You know?
Which I feel like the drill sergeant from before was constantly saying like exactly that to
Exactly.
Hudson. Like
She just takes over for the drill sergeant. She literally takes over the drill sergeant role, but also is, you know, checking Burke and
look into my eye.
Assholes and elbows.
I'll use that moment to return to a thing, you know, do or don't women like this movie or have the capacity to like this movie? Of course, you know, it's dependent on the individual. But again, watching this with my wife, with respect to Ripley as a protagonist, as a hero, as a leader, she was very struck and drawn into her as a character because, yes, she's brave. Yes, she's heroic. Yes, she's a leader. She's all these things that are, you know, stereotypically considered masculine traits, but she's also very feminine in a lot of ways. She's not macho, and they draw Vasquez as such a strong character deliberately to contrast against her, and that Vasquez is like the embodiment of all masculine ideals.
All three Marine women have short hair.
Buff, you know, razzes the other men, loves big guns. She has the fucking giant phallic gun that's like a dick, obviously. You know, that's the idea of masculizing, you know, a female character, and James Cameron loves and fetishizes these powerful women throughout his whole filmography. But Ripley, he doesn't make her that.
She doesn't
even
need to
when
do
she's a
chin-ups to
leader,
be a
right? Even when
badass.
she's a leader, even when she's brave, even when she's heroic, she's still vulnerable. She's still scared. She's still maternal. She's still all these things that are
still maternal, and not just to Newt, to everyone.
Yeah,
she's
completely.
She's a caregiver. She has a heightened emotional responsibility to the people around her and to the world at large. And she's like the moral center of these movies too.
Totally. And what's really interesting about that kind of thing, as she and I, my wife and I, explored that a little bit further, is Ripley never, more than anything, her agenda and her kind of motivating force is protecting Newt, and is, again, I think, reestablishing that family bond, the surrogacy, becoming a mother again after losing her daughter in this version of the film. And what's very interesting is when she has the final, before she has the final battle with the Queen, we see the Queen and she exists only to lay these eggs, right, and to plant these things. But then what does she do at the end? She literally rips herself off from
That
her
is
egg
the
sac.
grossest part
It's
for me.
the grossest,
It's-
and
it's
but it's super
disturbing.
cool. And if you don't think it's a bridge too far to unpack that a little bit, she's almost like abdicating her job as a mother character to kill Ripley, and
Yeah.
she separates from her like quote unquote maternal duty to become a warrior queen and fight her. But Ripley, who never loses sight of protecting Newt, eventually fights her and wins. So it's like the character that becomes true and stays loyal to that role of motherhood is the greater hero at the end. And that's like a pretty fucking cool concept and ideal. And there's not a lot of characters anywhere throughout action movies, name me two more, who are strong because of that maternal instinct and not in spite of it.
The greatest female action hero.
Her and Sarah Connor.
I think, yeah.
Another
I think
James
ever.
Cameron
that would be
creation.
the other one.
Right.
To,
I would say
quickly to
one of the
mind.
great film protagonists, female.
Oh yeah, sure.
I would go
Yeah,
for
and
that.
it goes. I mean, like you said, Oscar nominated for this. Performance.
Could have won
So,
if they didn't
yeah.
cut her best scenes.
Yeah, but when the alien rips
did
off
she
the
lose
egg
to?
sack,
I don't know.
that
That's a good
special
question.
effect is so nasty. Like
It's
how
super dope.
sticky it is,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
how much of a ripping
just a
sensation
great
it gives
moment.
you with just looking at it.
And the
It's-
sound is sick.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
This reminds you of a good scab you've picked.
Oh.
Where else can we go from here? Is there anything in this movie that we think doesn't work? Is there something that any of us like wish they did differently, or like feel like it's a
really
missed
hard.
opportunity?
This is one of those ones that's like in my top 20 or top 10.
I'd like to see
all-time.
Jonesy come back. Maybe Jonesy.
Just the cat.
Yeah,
I love this part right here.
Jonesy is
What's
somehow.
this part right here?
When the guy puts his hand down on the goo and he's like,
Oh,
"Eh,
yeah.
it's fine. It's
Just a
just
little
normal,
hint.
normal
Oh, yeah.
plain goo."
Yeah, just don't worry about it. But it's true. You don't even need like the shots of the alien killing the pilot to get what happened. Like that would be the real leave it on the table for.
What if it's like one of those mech suits, but it has like kind of a fishbowl thing on the top of it, and Jonesy's inside, like controlling it, and that thing comes in and just starts kicking ass? You think that would
Wait,
make
you
the
think
movie better?
Jonesy should get his own mech suit? Is that?
No, I just
Sigourney Weaver lost to. She was nominated alongside Jane Fonda for The Morning After. Everyone remembers that movie, obviously. Kathleen Turner for Peggy Sue Got Married. Interesting performance. Sissy Spacek for Crimes of the Heart, a movie that has long been forgotten to time. And the winner, Marlee Matlin for Children of a Lesser God.
Okay.
It's definitely.
Have any of you guys seen Coda yet? That's the new Marlee Matlin movie that's out now.
Is that the one? Children of Deaf Adults. That's
Yes.
what Coda means.
Children of Deaf Adults.
I saw.
oh, that's what it means.
That's
like-
what the movie's about.
Oh
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Speaking of Marvel movies, I saw Shang-Chi the other day.
How was
It was
it?
good. It was really good. If
I'm
you-
hearing it's better than you think it would be.
It ends with a big animated fight between giant monsters,
Of course.
because it's a Marvel movie. But for the interim, it actually is really cool. It's like if you like wuxia, movies like Hero and House of Flying Daggers and stuff, it's got a lot of good references to that and it's fun. Like the leads are all really charismatic, and it's got Tony Leung, who we know from Hard Boiled, who was also in Infernal Affairs and In the Mood for Love, and just like every great Asian.
It has
movie
Tony
ever.
Leung.
Making his American movie debut.
I know
Actually
it has
speaks a little
Aquafina
English.
as well, right?
It does.
Yeah, I heard she's good.
And
She's
whoever,
always good.
Whoever the lead guy in it, who I don't even know what he's from, but he was.
I've
very
seen
good
him
too.
in the Kim's Convenience.
I think that's
The
what he's
lead
from.
guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the lead guy.
He also famously did a lot of stock images, and
Yeah,
like
I know about
someone
that.
posted a meme. Did you see it?
Yeah.
It's like him pointing to like a computer monitor with like people around him, like in an office, and he's like, "Look, here's me laughing at everyone who thought this movie would suck." or
He's got
something
good
like
he's got good just random charisma. Just I could watch the guy do stuff. You know, I don't even know if he's a good actor. He's great as just being a movie star. I think he'll probably.
I
go
was
far.
I wasn't confident when they picked him. I think he's like really good. I feel like he's got a good comedic sense, but I always thought Shang-Chi was just like a ripoff of Bruce Lee. So like,
You want a Bruce Lee-ish kind of guy that casts
and
against
I don't see him as that, but I do think maybe
I'm
he
glad they didn't
did
do
bring
that.
something.
Yeah, they did
physical.
something different. It was very entertaining.
You guys will tap me on the shoulder when we're done talking about the Marvel.
I'll switch over.
Well, okay, we're good now.
Last night I watched an HBO Max movie called *Malignant*, and because I had heard that it's really good, and I watched the opening scene of this movie, and it was like really bad. It was very campy, and like I was like, why? How did people think this is good? This is very bad. And so I paused the movie and I started like reading about it, and I had read some review or something, and it said like, this is a campy movie. Like this is like what the director set out to make. So if you can just sit through it and just like, entertain that
Is
this
it
is
2.5
supposed to
hours
be
long? Colin should love it.
It was like 2 hours long. Yeah.
Cool.
And they're like, if you could just sit through it, it is so worth it. And so I was like, okay, I'm sitting there processing this, and I'm like, this movie's directed by James Wan, the guy who directed Saw, of course.
Yep.
But more recently, he did Fast and Furious
Very
7,
talented
which
guy,
is like
yeah.
one of the most successful movies ever. He did The Conjuring 1 and 2, which are both pretty good.
Yep.
And then most recently, he did Aquaman, which I don't know if you guys saw that. Not my favorite movie, but I can say that is a very ambitious movie for a guy who's never directed a superhero movie before. It's like 2.5 hours long. The effects look great. It's criminal that movie wasn't even nominated for best visual effects because of some like
Matt's gonna have an Aquaman birthday party.
technicality or something.
No, he already had
No,
that.
no. So what I'm saying is like,
Well,
he's gonna have an Aquaman
all
2
he's
birthday
saying is
party
that
next
movie
year.
holds water.
Yeah. Oh, good job.
excellent. That made up for your blue joke.
I thought the blue one was better.
But so now I'm sitting here and I'm like, this guy is like on top of the world. This is essentially a blank check movie for him. They said, here, you go make whatever you want. It's clear to me that this is like, it actually had a high budget, but for him, a lower budget.
Right.
It's made in Australia. He's Australian, so it's like all Australian actors. You don't recognize anyone in the movie. And I'm like, why did he choose to make this movie? And by the end of the movie, I totally get it. And it's like, it's so
okay.
worth
Now I'm
it.
looking forward to-
It's so worth it.
I'm looking
You
forward
have
to
to
watching
watch
it.
it. Just know that it's supposed to be like bad,
All right,
campy.
cool. I'm in.
It's excellent. I don't want to ruin it for you guys, but
I was
like,
going to watch it anyways, but I'm definitely in now. All right, Jonathan, you can rejoin the podcast.
Okay. Yeah,
Let's
thanks,
do.
guys.
You want to do a
Good,
little
good
top
power
four?
nap I had there.
Yeah, I think it's time for top 4.
All right, let's do a little top 4.
Sure.
We're gonna do top 4. This is a really hard one.
The guy who plays Hicks.
You're gonna no.
hold up.
Not,
I realized something about top 4. I think the best people to choose are like the bigger and more famous the person. Like we did Ridley Scott last time. Then it's more fun because like we know the movies, we can guess them.
yeah.
But there's so many to choose from.
Yeah.
If you choose like lesser people, then it's hard because we don't even know the movies.
Yeah. Well, you know all these movies, but you're not going to get them. So this is going to be a hard top 4.
All right,
We're doing Lance Heinrichsen, and you will only get 2 of these before the clue round. You might not even get that many.
Oh, I'm not going to get any of these. This is Bishop, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not
this
going to
is
get
Bishop.
any of these.
Are they all movies or any TV?
They are all movies.
Okay.
And in fact, 2 of them are from this franchise. That's a little hint to start off with.
Oh, that's good.
It won't help you that much. It'll only help you for 1. Jonathan, you're up first.
So I cannot say aliens, or can I say
You can.
aliens?
You can.
I'm gonna say aliens.
Yes, you got that one right.
Boom.
That was the only easy one.
Okay.
All the rest of these are hard.
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to say Alien vs. Predator.
Oh my God. Nailed it. Good job, Matt. All right, Colin, you're not going to get this. We might just move to the hint round after Colin misses
He's been in
this
a
one.
lot of shitty horror movies, right?
He's been in a lot of shitty horror movies. It isn't any of the shitty horror movies that
Really?
he's been in. Well, not any of the shitty horror movies that he's been in.
Oh.
Shitty.
Is it Titanic?
No, it is not.
Oh, I mistaked him for Billy Zane again.
Is that a common thing? All right, Jonathan, let's just move to the hint round.
Wait, are you sure?
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, well, okay, go ahead. Let's guess.
Let's
some
do
of
one
them.
more round.
Yeah.
I'm
Do you know?
supposed to guess?
Yeah.
Oh boy, for Lance Henriksen. No, I'm not even.
You
gonna
know
waste
one that
it.
he's in. It's another Cameron movie.
Okay.
I don't know if it's
All right,
the
I'll
answer.
try and throw it out then. Let me see. Abyss?
No.
No.
He's not in Abyss, is he?
He's in the first Terminator movie.
Oh.
But I don't know if that's my guess.
You did say it out
I did
loud.
say it. Sure, that could be my guess. Fine.
No, that's wrong.
Damn it.
Wrong.
The Phantom? Oh, no, that's Billy Zane again.
Wrong.
I like this. This is a good
Wait,
bit.
Back to the Future Part 2.
All right. Okay. One of these movies I've already mentioned when we talked about Lance Henriksen before. And it's got a connection to Cameron, though Cameron didn't direct it.
You
Jonathan,
said
you were up.
like something dark or
Strange
something?
Days.
Wrong.
Not Strange Days.
It's Near Dark.
It is Near Dark.
Wow.
All right. The last movie is an action movie, not in the sense of how this is an action movie. It is a like stupid action movie with one of the great action stars of the 90s.
Expendables?
No, but you got the right
Wrong.
department. You're in the right range.
Oh.
He plays the main villain of this movie,
Cobra or something?
and he's playing across from.
I know what it is. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Sudden Death?
It is
Kickboxer?
Hard Target.
Yes, our dog.
Fuck yeah.
Matt, I got to be honest. I think you killed that. That was a really impressive showing of a very hard round of. All right.
He famously in Hard Target at the end, I think Jean-Claude Van Damme pulls the pin out of a grenade and puts it in his jacket and like pushes him into like a haystack or something. And he's like, yeah, I think it is. It's like in a barn or something. And he's like panicking and he pulls the grenade out and he like unscrews. It's like a futuristic kind of grenade. He unscrews it and pulls it apart like this, and that like diffuses it, because like the one node is like far from the other. And he goes, and then all of a sudden you see like a bit of electricity go like from the one node to the other. Like he didn't pull them far enough apart, and it does that and then explodes and kills him. That's like how
and
he
it's
dies.
set up. That's all set up earlier in the movie. What's disappointing
Yeah.
for me is he explodes into a ball of fire, and I kind of wanted it just to be hay, just going everywhere.
Poof.
Okay, we're gonna do one more. Have we haven't done Sigourney Weaver yet, have we?
No, we skipped her for some
Okay,
reason.
we skipped her probably to do it in this movie. So let's do that in this movie. We're going to do Sigourney Weaver. You have heard of all these movies. They are all huge movies. You will know them all. You probably won't get one until the hint round, but
Who's first?
Let's go. We'll start with Jonathan again.
Gorillas in the Mist.
No.
Wrong.
Wow, I'm shocked. I thought
Is
that
that
was
the sequel to Congo?
It's the prequel.
Oh, my bad. Right.
I'll say, I don't know, Ghostbusters.
No.
Oh,
Wrong.
Alien?
Yes. You said Alien, right?
Yeah, the first one.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Back to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Working Girl.
Nope.
ooh.
Wrong.
You've guessed a couple of comedies. There is one comedy on this list, only one.
I don't know. Well, I guess I'll say Avatar.
Yes.
Ghostbusters 2?
Right there.
No. All right, we're in the hint round. You've got 2 movies left. Your hint is that they are both sci-fi movies.
Alien 3.
Nope.
Wrong.
But there's no more Alien movies on the board,
I
or
did not say that.
oh, you did not say that. Okay. We didn't say this one. So Aliens.
Nope.
Alien Resurrection.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, your last movie is a sci-fi comedy. You know from my clues.
Galaxy Quest.
Got it.
Oh, that one's so good.
See,
Nice.
she was pretty easy.
I should have guessed that. I love
All
Galaxy.
right, that's a
Oh.
good top 4.
Galaxy Quest. Great. Yeah. What else do we need to say about this movie? See, this is what I mean. Like,
We could talk a little bit
It's all
about
been
the
said.
ending. I mean, it is
Talking
sort of-
about her performance here and being nominated for Best Actress for this, which I think is so cool. We so seldom see genre films, recognized that way. There's one moment in particular that stuck out. There's the whole performance is a powerhouse, but there's this one quiet moment, and she's not afforded a lot of quiet moments here in this role, where she's like in the elevator before she goes into warrior mode to fight, and she just has this really quiet, vulnerable moment where she like almost meditates for a second. It reminded me of something like, and I happen to be wearing the t-shirt today, of something like from Seven Samurai, like a moment of just like weakness, doubt, reflection, like tapping into a warrior mode, and then she just kind of like snaps into it, and it's such a cool James Cameron moment. She nails it perfectly. Neither of them overstated. It's not too much done. But little things like that just elevate this above, what a lesser director or a lesser actor would be capable of doing. And it really kind of makes me wish we had more high caliber actors like this taking roles like this. I mean, Liam Neeson, of course, is another example of somebody who reorganized their career around roles like this. But you so seldom get like good actors taking on genre work.
I think
like
maybe
this.
because you so seldom get good writers and directors
Most
writing
likely.
thoughtful parts
Yeah.
for movies like this.
Has anyone else seen Baby Mama with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey?
I can't even imagine where
Did you
this
see
is
it?
going.
Yeah, I did.
Sigourney Weaver's
ago.
in it. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
She's like their.
I tried to delete that from my memory.
She's like a fertility consultant
I
or something
remember
like that, and like I think her scenes are like much funnier than some of the other films because like she's at this point she's older and she's obviously old in the scenes, but she keeps talking about how she's like still getting pregnant and like it's like and she's doing it in a way that's like really like passive aggressive towards like because she's a fertility consultant and she's like, oh, I'm still doing it and I'm like old.
You know, it's
and
funny,
like, it's really weird.
She's had an impressive comedy career, despite not really being like. I don't see her as funny even in her comedy role. She's like obviously she's funny in those movies.
She's the
but
straight
she's
man
always
to the
kind of playing
funnier
straight
person.
man. Yeah, like she's not in on the joke in those movies,
Yeah.
kind of in a fun way. You know, like Ghostbusters and Galaxy Quest. She's kind of playing her character very straight, but that's what nails the comedic aspect of it.
But,
which is
but when
fun.
she transfers into being Zool, she still like is going over the top enough
Right.
to like. Yeah.
No, she's just a very talented actress.
Yeah, she's great. Is she in The Big Chill? Is she in that movie?
No.
She's in some
know.
movie that's like that, right? With like an ensemble. Is it like, what's the other one? There's another movie like that. Fuck.
What's the one where she's Copycat? That's the one I love.
Oh, I haven't seen
that.
That's a really good one. That's
What-
not at all
what
what
year
you're
is
talking
that
about.
from?
That's
94, 95.
Yeah, some mid 90s.
96.
Harry Connick Jr. plays a serial killer. Dermot Mulroney or Dylan McDermott, one of those guys plays a cop, and Holly
We've had
Hunter.
this confusion
and
before.
Holly Hunter.
I'm sure
plays
I
a
don't
cop.
have to tell you guys the SNL skit about that. right?
Very good. Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Oh, and a copycat?
No,
about
about-
Dermot Mulroney and Dylan
Oh,
McDermott
yeah,
being
right.
confused.
Right.
Dylan McDermott Mulroney.
See, it's so hard for me to remember seeing this movie for the first time and this not being in it with a countdown to the guns running out of ammo, because this is kind of like this iconic memory that I have of this movie, but it's just a testament to how many more times I've seen the extended version of it.
Speaking of countdowns, I have to point out a trope that this movie has that I love, and I'm like, where was this born? But it's like a classic sci-fi action movie trope of like escaping from something that's about to self-destruct, and it's the calm robot voice being like, self-destruct in 10.
Isn't it from one of the Austin
9,
Powers too? That
8.
they're
They
like,
absolutely
spoof
took
Yeah.
it. Like Spaceballs absolutely took
Spaceballs
it.
is
Like
another
it's
one, yeah.
it's just been done
So
to death
funny.
at this point.
I
But
would-
like anytime you see it done in earnest in a movie, I just love that. Like I love that whoever programmed the voice to be in the most panicked moment to be super fucking
Super
emotionless.
chill.
I love that.
Like, get the fuck
Yeah,
out! 5 minutes. Get the fuck run.
Close all
motherfuckers."
shops in the mall.
I would venture to guess that Alien was the first movie to do that.
Yeah, it might be.
If you could think of one earlier.
You know what I love about this movie, and so I have no complaints when a movie like there. I think we've actually covered movies before, maybe a Bond movie or something, where there was a countdown, and then obviously way more time elapsed between the countdown and when the shit actually hit the fan.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're cross-cutting. You know, movies play with time in interesting ways. I'm not a stickler for like, oh, you absolutely have to count down in real time. This movie does on multiple occasions. Not only is that countdown when it says 15 minutes left, the bomb goes off exactly 15 minutes after that in real time.
I've never noticed that.
and every
Movies
minute-
never do that.
And every minute it hits on the way. And also when the guy says there's a point where they're like boots on the ground in 10 seconds, and they literally jump out 10 seconds of screen time later. I was scrubbing through it, just verifying. I was
Movies
like, holy
never
shit.
do that.
They nailed it. You know, like, and I it's not like that's a must. I don't fault movies for fucking with time and playing with that a little bit. But I really appreciate the fact that they completely dedicated themselves to when the timing was said it was something was going to happen at a certain point. They stuck to it.
I once saw Michael Biehn in a pizza parlor. Do people still call them that?
Sure.
Here in LA. That was fun. He was right behind me in line.
And also at a Q&A.
Yeah.
That was a good story. I feel like I've been there.
I remember seeing it in the theater, but I don't remember a Q&A.
That's good. Yeah,
He
just
did.
saying.
He did a Q&A with a certain moderator whose name will remain unnamed. I think you know who I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
Certain person who was moderating the Burbank Film Festival's.
He was the moderator. He was.
Indeed.
Maybe I
Indeed.
didn't stick around for it or something. I really
think
don't
you-
remember.
I must
this.
have been
I
because I
think
remember
you
I went
stuck
there
around.
because
Are we talking about someone who's been canceled?
By the way, this crawling. No, we're not.
Oh,
this
this crawling
crawling
makes
of
me
of
uncomfortable.
yeah. Oh god, this is one of the coolest mini moments in this.
This freaks
movie.
me out. Yeah.
and it's like
Just
what
absolutely
kind of
great.
camera were they
That
using?
shot
They
when he
just-
looks down
GoPro,
and sees
like
the
the world's
opening.
first
And you
GoPro.
can tell they clearly put a camera in there because it's the way it's vibrating. I think they just set it on a skid or something and had him push
Yeah.
it as he crawls because it's all bumpy. And
Bishop
it's-
is a real homie. He does not get like the props he deserves.
oh yeah, Bishop
Saving,
is
saving all these people's asses
know,
here.
yeah low key star of this.
Yeah. Who's the best character in this?
I mean, it's Ripley, of course.
Other than Ripley.
Yeah, other than
For me, it's Bishop for sure. What's really cool
Yeah.
about Bishop is before we know he's an android or a synthetic person, whatever terminology we want to use, we meet him as an emotional character before before he's revealed that way. I think again, such a clever choice in the film here,
And
he's-
the hurt he feels at Ripley
absolutely,
dismissing him
absolutely,
is palpable.
and
which is
that
kind of,
really subtle, like you used the word slur earlier,
Yeah.
where they call him a synthetic or whatever, or not.
they call him an android. He prefers synthetic life form.
No, he prefers artificial person.
Oh yeah, artificial.
He prefers
person.
artificial
Yeah.
person, and Burke, as he says that, doesn't even look at him and just is addressing Ripley and is like, "We always have a synthetic on board."
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just like, oh, he's so callous, like even
Yeah.
in minor,
Burke is
like
the worst.
little microaggressions.
Burke is
Right.
Every
least favorite
line of
character.
his when he comes into
He's
the
a real piece of shit. Yeah.
in the scene with the coffee cups, he's like he addresses the job she's doing at the time, and it's just like you're doing this in like the most passive aggressive, hurtful way, like. And then, like, only because the next thing he says is like, "You could do something else," like whatever I'm telling you to
And
do.
Paul Reiser, generally likable guy.
Oh yeah, but Burke is
Cast against type
just
as
the
a
worst.
real scumbag.
he's
here.
cast against type, and I believe Lance Henriksen is
Oh yeah, he was
usually a villain.
He was usually a villain before and after this. Actually, Michael Biehn hadn't done a lot of hadn't played a lot of hero roles. He had played like a lot of kind of sinister, like he's a bad guy in The Abyss, and that was more like what he played. He got some action roles where he was a hero after this, most notably like The Rock and Navy SEALs. But like for the most part, he was playing kind of a good guy with an edge, or a bad guy, or a good guy who turns out to be a bad guy, or something like that.
This guy's
'Cause he looks a
career
little
is
sinister.
fucking lit, in my opinion.
Michael Biehn, yeah.
Yeah, in The Rock,
He had a
this
good run.
movie, The Abyss, and Terminator.
Gotta say, I find him to be a terrible actor.
Really?
Yeah, but
Bad.
I like don't care.
That
Like
reading
those
line
movies are
kinda
all
doesn't
so
matter.
good to me.
Yeah,
Sure, he's had
And
cool
honestly,
parts. Absolutely.
when he does it, when he in a movie like this, he nails it. Whatever he's supposed to be doing in this, you get that he's like maybe not that bright, but also is a guy who wants to do the right thing, who's very competent at his job, wants to protect Ripley. That's all coming across, and he's got a little charisma with Sigourney Weaver.
I would
He
say
does-
his
he
best
does a
acting
little
is The Abyss, though, because like he loses his mind in The Abyss,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
he's like pulling it off a little bit more, even more than like what is his name in Terminator?
Reese.
Kyle Reese. Okay, I could not think of that. Kyle Reese is more of a character than like a Marine guy or whatever, but like I think the performance as a Marine guy in The
he's good
Abyss
as
going
Reese,
insane is better.
Yeah, because Kyle Reese isn't like a soldier in the sense of all the other soldiers he plays. Kyle Reese is a soldier in a broken army that was raised by, basically raised by random people who were raised by somebody.
He's
who
a
was raised by
gorilla,
some-
basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think he does he projects a lot of the vulnerability of Reese too. I agree with you, Jonathan. Most times, I'm not impressed by his acting. If you ever want to see him be a bad actor, watch Navy SEALs. It's fucking terrible. Between him and Charlie Sheen, it's like the bad acting contest. But like, he does have moments where you're like, wow, I see why people were casting him in
I
shit.
agree
I get it.
for Terminator.
Yeah,
That
I get it.
all the points you just made. That makes that character well, because he doesn't quite. I don't quite believe him as a super soldier, but that's the point.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about James Cameron deleted scenes that were absolutely correctly deleted, his bit in Terminator 2, the extended version, which Cameron consciously deleted, it wasn't a studio decision. Oh, he's bad in that. He's bad in
I
Terminator
wonder-
2, and I
here's-
was like,
I don't
God,
remember that scene. What
it's
happens?
garbage. He comes in a dream sequence to Sarah Connor she's still in the prison before she breaks out, and he like psychs her up to like, you gotta get your son, and she's like, don't leave me, and he's like, I'm sorry, Sarah, I have
just
to
sounds
go.
like
I
a bad
do
scene.
It's
kinda
really bad. It's
He
just
notoriously
bad.
has Titanic has a famous like alternate ending that is unwatchable. You can find it on YouTube if you watch it. It's
Just
like
steer clear of the iceberg at the last second.
yeah, go left. That was a close one.
Shwee.
Now, how many views does this thing have to have before it's no longer unwatchable? Hey,
Wait, I want to know more about this alternate ending of Titanic. Do you have any details at all?
The old woman goes to the back of the ship and she reveals that she has the diamond, and
I may have seen this.
she's gonna throw it off, and like Bill Paxton, I think, comes out and he's like, "No!" And he like,
Yeah.
there's something
I
like
pulls out
that.
He pulls out a shotgun and he's like, "Don't drop it."
Yeah, it's something like that. They like threaten her.
It goes into slow motion and she's like dodging bullets.
Is it possible that Michael Biehn, like, because we saw him at that Q&A, we've seen him before.
He
and things.
notoriously had
Is there
problems,
something
right?
wong with him? Yeah, like, is it maybe like he,
He's an
had some addiction
alcoholic or-
stuff,
yeah,
or
I think.
like, because I wonder if maybe he.
Just the TMZ segment of the pod.
Well, no, I'm just curious. We're talking about his how he's good in some stuff and not so good in other stuff. Is it possible?
No, I was
that-
just talking about him being not good, primarily
Yeah.
myself.
Well, I mean, but we've named a couple of. We think he's good in this. We think he's good in Terminator. Is it just the roles, or is it possible that he lost a little bit off his fastball because of some life stuff? You know,
I think that is definitely the case. And in fact, you just reminded me, his role was recast at the last second in this movie.
it was
He was originally played by James Remar.
Yep.
He's the dad from
very
Dexter.
very that guy actor.
Yeah.
you'd know him if you saw him.
Yeah, exactly. And then he had to leave, I think, also because of
Alcohol. I
Alcohol,
think.
yeah.
He's had to go to rehab, and I think he actually was. It was I think he actually shot. No, he didn't shoot any scenes. It was the day before. No, he did shoot some scenes because I think he's actually in a couple of shots where
From
it's from a
behind.
distance and
Yeah.
you can't really tell it's him. But yeah, Biehn came on like no notice, was on a plane and was shooting the next day. And everyone else had gone through Marine boot camp and done all this stuff, and so he had no prep for this.
I love this sequence, this whole bit.
Oh, when she falls asleep, yeah, and then Burke moves the gun and trap. I mean, just fucking Burke.
He's such a slime ball.
He's a slime.
Definitely
Absolute slime.
our
So
least
mad
favorite.
about him.
He went to the same undergrad as me.
Wait, what?
That was like their claim to fame.
All
You
right.
know, I don't think I'd brag
Paul
about
Reiser
Burke
went
going
there.
to your undergrad. He was not a. He's, I mean, I guess
Class of 20,
good that he-
2140.
yeah, 2140. But in answer to my favorite character thing, if you're discounting Ripley, and also I would say even more than Bishop, I really love Hudson. I think this is one of the great all-time. I like Bill Paxton when he's a lead. I think he's great in a lot of movies when he's a lead, but he is great as Cameron uses him so well because he uses him in these stupid. Like this and True Lies, I think are the highlight Bill
Of his
Paxton's-
career.
of his entire career. Just my favorite.
Obviously,
role.
you're
obviously
forgetting the
Twister.
opening sequence of Terminator.
I mean, also a great random small performance.
walk, man.
Yeah, I know. He's just so good. But that's like that scene. If they extended the scene through like an hour and a half of the movie, like just play just a goofball character and just go with it.
I'm
He-
still in the
he-
Twister camp. We
He
all know
bumps
that.
me a little bit in this. I have to be honest, and I love him in general, and I like him in this, and I love this movie. So it's not a major thing, but he
Haters gonna
bumps me
hate.
a little bit where he's just a little too corny sometimes. But obviously, I think I'm the only person holding that in the room.
No, I see what you're saying. I happen to love it. I think
Yeah.
it plays
Yeah.
perfectly.
It
but
works,
I get how
ultimately.
reasonable people can disagree at the corniness level being maybe a little bit over or a little bit acceptable.
The one thing we haven't mentioned, the child actress playing Newt.
She's mostly
Interesting.
awful. Mostly.
It's like
Yes.
it's like that doesn't work, but it kind of works because like she can really do anything. We're led to believe she's so traumatized that like it kind of doesn't matter how she acts. It's like
Yeah.
she's not gonna act right no matter what,
Yeah. But it is clear that she is not good, but
Yeah.
it does work.
But it works so well.
There's
Well, again,
one
that one line read is a powerful moment to me, where
affirmative when she
where
pronounces it wrong.
where she goes, "Oh, don't worry, Newt. These are really well trained soldiers, whatever." And she just it won't make any difference. That moment is a
How many takes
It's a
did
good
that
line.
one take?
yeah.
it's
Look,
a-
yeah, she's
a
not
crapshoot.
the
It's a-
greatest
yeah.
kid actor, but
And she's a good screamer.
never worked.
She is
yeah,
a good
she's a good
screamer.
screamer, which is
The scream is
actually
solid.
probably
And
how she got.
She's
the
got a
role,
good
honestly.
look, but I kind of don't understand why if this is shot at at a similar time as Poltergeist 2. Heather O'Rourke was still alive when this movie was being shot. How did they not just get the little girl from Poltergeist?
because she was
who
busy.
is
Clearly,
I guess she was all booked up, but I don't know.
Also, why not create opportunities for other little girl actresses? You can't give them.
This is why, because
Yeah,
they're not as good as Heather O'Rourke.
Sorry.
Also interesting because speaking of her line reads, and that mostly come at night, she was, as many of the cast members in this, as Vasquez was, cast because she was a local. Vasquez was working in the theater in London. What's her name?
Vasquez's real name?
Jeanette Goldstein.
Yeah, Goldstein.
Was working in the theater in London, which is how she got this job. And the little girl, Carrie Henn, was just a rando that they cast from a American-born family that was, her parents were working in London, but she apparently had adopted a lot of the accent. So like they cast her because they were like, oh, we'll get an American kid who happens to live here, and then they found that they had to like dialogue coach her a little bit because she was mispronouncing words because she had already been.
This reminds me. What about the line about Vasquez implying that the border between the United States and Mexico still exists, like in this like future, or at least some kind of southern border
coming. They're still crossing into it for the benefits of America.
Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
Vaguely.
Yeah, like Bill Paxton, he says like, Vasquez heard aliens. They thought she meant she thought they meant illegal aliens, and she signed up or something. And it's like, wow, like we're so far in the future that I would not have thought of that, but I guess,
and yet we're still there today. So
yeah,
I guess that's a permanent thing.
That's weird though, right? Because they have like off-world colonies,
right?
Not really. I think it's not a throwaway or a mistake, quote unquote, as much as I think it's a conscious way to tie together themes. Again, the films
the
explore
class system, right?
Yeah, to me, and the notion of colonization, the notion of imperialism, and what this society must look like on Earth. We never get to see. Remind me if the future alien films do. We never see Earth, right? In what that version of Earth looks like, but we get little Easter eggs and little breadcrumbs.
There is an implication, though, or I don't think it's an implication. There is sort of a way in which corporations have trumped nationality and have sort of
totally, and even in the name of the corporation, Wayland Yutani suggests a kind of transcontinental, Japanese,
which is why
American.
it does kind of bump for me. It did bump for me similar to, and I'm not saying you're wrong about anything you said, but it did bump for me in a way similar to Colin, because I thought like, illegal alien. I was like, I do feel like this is something where corporations have trumped all of that, any kind of nationalism or border structure.
But that's what makes it interesting that he says it so casually and jokingly. Yeah. It's like, well, so maybe it is what you're talking. I liked what Jonathan was saying. I think what Jonathan was saying and what you're saying actually
Jonathan was saying, and I have problems with Jonathan.
It is hard to bring a guest on who is more interesting than the host of the pod. So
it's very hard.
Yeah.
I struggle with that all the time.
Definitely.
No, I think the combination of what you're both saying is actually the reason why it should be in the film. Like, it does help tell the story they're trying to tell about.
Way to take the middle ground and please no one, Colin.
Well, I think
I'm a master.
I think it speaks to attention. All these little things that they don't need. They never spend more time on it than they have to. That's a throwaway line, right? That it could. The movie's the same without it. It's a joke, quote unquote. There's a throwaway.
It's hard to remember.
The film cuts it out, but we're talking about this version now. But like I said, I think that bit about the family being little pirates, Newt's family, and wanting to discover maybe a treasure trove in this abandoned ship, and it's like, oh yeah, they're not even thinking about how this could be fucking dangerous. They're thinking about how it could be
multi-purpose world building elements that actually do multiple
enriches
things.
this quite deeply, and it separates it from something more. I don't know how many B sci-fi movies from the same period are we not doing a podcast
Forget about B sci-fi movies. How many movies with $18 million budgets, sci-fi movies from this period, have we forgotten about and are not great?
And for me, I mean, maybe this is controversial in the room. I don't remember all your guys' opinions about this, but like compared to something like Star Wars, these movies are so much richer, more interesting. Star Wars films never got interested in their own worlds in a way that for me as an adult viewer, once I, passed the age of like 12 when they were re-released for us, they just never held interesting ideas beyond just like, oh, it's fun fantasy, lightsaber stuff. it doesn't go there in those worlds.
This is more world building
Yeah,
than Star
completely.
Wars, which is an adventure movie. It's you
Right.
know it's
It's more fairy tale. It's like
Exactly.
not trying to have a
They're trying
message.
to a concise story that doesn't extend beyond its borders. At least the original
Yeah.
trilogy was very
You
much
walk
about
into
like,
these bars on these other planets, and it's just like there's a bunch of weird looking aliens, but
and
you
we
never
don't give a shit about them.
you don't give a
because
shit about
we
them,
only
and
give a
there's
shit about
nothing
Luke
to know
Skywalker.
about them.
Luke
Exactly.
Skywalker and his buddies. We're following the prince who's going to ascend to
But
the
even
throne.
the
and
notion
that's
of
the whole
like
idea.
Chewbacca being friends with Han Solo is never explored beyond like a guy
could
and
be
his dog.
fascinating, but
It's just a guy and his dog.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
it's not. What does that mean to
and that's
be?
not a fault of the movie. I don't
you know,
think,
it's a limitation for me
well,
as a viewer.
I would say
It's
that
a
the movie's got
limitation.
different. The movie has different ambitions. Just like you can make a
Okay,
great action
sure.
movie that would there are other great action movies that aren't this that don't have the.
I didn't
expansive
come here to
world
bury
building.
Star Wars specifically, but just as an idea of like what does,
Someone had to do it.
and I will take the mantle. Damn it.
Marvel,
Give me a
Star
shovel.
Wars.
Yeah,
Just
well, look,
making
I am.
enemies.
You know who I am, damn
Crossing
it.
names
And you
off the
invite me
list.
on this podcast.
Yeah.
Y'all know who I am.
No, I agree. This is much more as a movie franchise. This is much more concerned with the greater world beyond the scope of it.
Totally.
They feel like minor characters in a much bigger story, even though on each individual movie we are following them very closely. They feel like just pawns in some bigger game that we'll never totally see, which is one of the reasons we haven't really talked about the prequels too much on here, and we're not covering them at this juncture, and hopefully never in the future, thank God. But one of my problems with them is it tries to fill out that world, and it gets too wrapped up in the mythology, and not enough focus on the individual characters going through a journey there, because it feels so beholden to the greater alien,
That's not a bad point, but I will defend. Was
love
it Covenant?
him. You
Was
love
it?
him.
Which was the second? Was Covenant.
the second one.
You liked that one?
I liked it a lot. A
Oh
lot.
God, okay. Let me.
I
Just,
did
Is
not
that the
like
Danny McBride one?
Prometheus. I
Can,
did
can
not.
you, in 30 seconds, summarize your Covenant?
I mean,
It's like Alien, but way faster, and the graphics are not as good.
Wait, which one's the Danny McBride one? That's Covenant.
That's
right?
Covenant.
That's
yeah.
the one that most people don't like.
Yeah.
I suppose so. I guess I don't know what the consensus is, but
I don't know. I also didn't do the research on that.
Prometheus for me was a big disappointment and letdown, and I had low expectations going into Covenant, but that one really worked for me.
I don't know if you know this, but Prometheus actually has, I mean, we're all about the director's cut today. There's a director's, or it's not even a director's cut, it's like a fan cut. Someone out there took all the deleted scenes and like cut them into the movie. And there's like, the ending is like so much better. There's like,
Does Charlize Theron explain why she doesn't run sideways?
no, but I think there is something to
then
that.
well, then I'm out, because that is the cardinal sin of that movie in my mind.
Yeah.
I haven't
I
seen
mean, there's
either
lots
of
of things wrong with it, but that.
Real quick, Hudson's death always bothers me in this movie because it just kind of happens because the plot needs it to
Yes.
happen.
Yeah,
You know, it's
true.
like,
Okay, we found something wrong with
yeah,
this movie.
some
It's
of
the
these
one
other
thing.
guys like sacrifice themselves and stuff. Like those deaths are honorable, and it's like, you know, they came at the right time. But Hudson like could have.
He gets too enthusiastic about shooting things and is dragged into the floor to his
That's
death
his
in
hubris.
seconds. Yeah.
He should have been. I don't know.
He should have been the one in the tunnel
with Vasquez.
but I
Instead, it's
kinda
like
like
what's
the-
his name? Like Corporal Dum
I
Dum.
kind of like that
Corporal
Corporal
Dum Dum.
whatever, yeah, Corporal Loser Ass actually like sort of has his moment of redemption where he lets everyone else go ahead and then
Yeah.
to go back to Vasquez. It's like, okay, you're incompetent and but and probably a coward, but also when it came down to it, you actually stepped up at some point.
And
which
committed
is-
suicide.
That was my favorite part when I was a kid of this movie was them, putting their when he pulls the pin in the grenade and she puts his hand on top of hers and he puts his hand on top of, and then they just like sit there and wait for the thing to blow them both up and take all the aliens with them.
Yeah.
I was like, just like, oh my God, give me a death like that. And then I, and then I realized,
With any luck, Harris. With
and
any
then I got
luck.
a little older. It was like, no, please, I never want to die.
Then you
Just
got to
live
the part with
forever.
Bishop, and you're like, now that's the death I want.
Rip me in half.
All right, let's quickly. Do you want to talk about the ending? Sure. Bishop is filled with cum.
I keep,
Well,
I
he
keep
did have a
wondering,
career as a
like,
sex robot before this.
but like
They never empty him
I
out
am
for
programmed
some
to
reason.
love.
that milk
Yo,
stuff
For the
though.
term synthetic anus.
For the term synthetic. Oh my god! But like, okay, let's say you have an android friend, right, in this world, and they get hurt and they start, that stuff starts coming out of him, do you call it blood, or you say like your lubricant is leaking, or what do you say?
My cum is
Oh, hey, Android pal, you're making some jizzy out your skin there.
Yeah, you got a little runny nose there. I think you're full.
I am quite backed up.
Thank you for turning me on.
You're quite good at turning me on. Yeah, I love that this movie, when I saw it in the theater, I really felt like this whole action sequence happens and it's great, and it feels like the end of the movie after the queen bit and she flies away. You could be happy with that as the end of the movie. But then like that extra bit at the end with the queen like ripping Bishop in half is an awesome visual.
Yeah.
And then their whole little fight there is like just the icing on the cake. Like the movie doesn't
when that
even...
door opens and she steps out. I mean, that's the line. It's the line, but it's also that
backlight.
We think that Newt is
moment.
fucked. We think that Ripley has ran away and abandoned her, and then the door opens, and we know she didn't. But the door opens, and we're like, "Oh, the fucking loaders!" And then she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight this bitch." And you know.
What I also love about that plant and payoff with the loader is that so much happens from the time we are introduced to the loader that you straight up forget about it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, it's not like a thing where you're like, oh, here comes the loader, here comes.
The loaders and blah blah. Yeah.
It's like, how will she
It is
get
honestly,
out of this?
it is honestly one of the better top of mind examples of the Chekhov's gun like philosophy of writing that I can think of, where it's so fucking clearly planted and it's so over planted for what it does in the film narratively. It's like, I can move things, and it's like, let's really establish this prop and how powerful this prop is, and then totally forget about it.
What makes it work is that they introduced that in the beginning, but you had you not seen this movie before, you are unaware that there is a queen. You're unaware that there's an alien that big, so you don't look at that thing and think like, oh, she's going to use this to fight the thing that is that size, you know?
Right. And they don't bring it with them.
Yeah.
They don't bring it with them,
also
exactly.
the plant has the other purpose of being a character moment for her to you know, we think that it's her fitting in with the Marines. She earns the respect of the sergeant.
Showing
and
utility, showing leadership.
And she's one of the gang, and she's going to be a leader, and she's going to be part of the team. And that's what we think this is about. And then at the end, we're like, oh yeah, they got us because they fooled us.
I would say the only thing about it, I don't know if this is bad. This might make it better, but I'm still like, oh, that thing. I don't think that thing really gives her that much better of a chance. You know what I mean?
Against a normal alien, it wouldn't, but because the queen is so
the queen looks intimidating to me.
bulky,
I'm like, okay, like she got the mech suit, but like now she's.
I mean, I think you can say too, she got a little bit lucky in the fight. You know,
Exactly.
like she falls the right way. It's a little
those,
bit.
and those tail
yeah,
whips
it doesn't show her
don't
kicking the shit
steer
out of her.
I kind of like that moment for Ripley too. Is like, this is all I need for enough confidence to like face off against this thing, because I'm pissed and
she
I'm
basically
ready
fights
to fight
it to a
it.
draw, and then almost gets sucked out of the air hatch herself. This is also a great moment.
I also want to
Newt
talk
in the
about
sewer.
With the whole setup to that moment.
I mean, this shot
I don't know
right here
how the
with
hell I forgot it, and it's a testament to how good the movie is. Of course, I remembered "Get Away from Her, You Bitch." I remember the backlight, very specifically the lighting of the shot where she's revealed to be in the loader for the showdown to fight the queen.
Yeah.
And yet, watching it the other night, I got so wrapped into the whole end sequence, and Cameron's a master at this. He does it so well in Terminator 2, where he has like 4 action sequences stacked on top of one another. So it's like an escape that leads to an escape that leads to a getaway that leads to like
a battle.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh, he doesn't give you a moment to breathe. That when they finally get back onto the ship at the end before the queen fight, I was just like, woo, that was a fucking whirlwind, dude. And I let my guard down. And then when Bishop gets stung like that, I was like, oh, it really landed this time.
Every time I watch this movie, when they're doing the countdown, I'm like, wait, 3 minutes left. How is she going to have the loader fight in 3 minutes? And then because I always forget that it's like, and I don't remember that there's like multiple endings, but unlike the Lord of the Rings, the multiple endings work in this. You know, they're keeping you on the edge of your seat, and you're never checking your watch being like, holy shit, how many endings does this movie have? You're like, oh God, they're safe. Oh no, they're fucked again. Like I forgot that when Newt says there's a shortcut across the roof, I forgot that they don't climb up because she immediately falls in the hole. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We got a whole other thing. It's always something. You know, it's one of these screenwriting things of just constantly not being afraid.
They did a classic one just now. The elevator door doesn't shut exactly when you press the door shut button.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
even this bit where here now we are seeing the wound caused by the acid, they remind you of it not long ago not long or too much earlier. Here you have the moment where he has to again shoot the alien and it fucks the guy's face all up. So he's always kind of reminding you and planting and paying off and setting things up. The economy of time in a James Cameron movie, even when they run long, is just very impressive. He's never giving you filler to me.
The acid burn on him too is on the chest part of his body armor, which has throughout the film had a heart painted on it, which is like just a nice little interesting visual piece.
Jonathan, that moment of like calm right before the queen shows up, I also love how like you're like, oh, what a relief, we're here, and then you just hear like a little sizzle. It's like, and like the character's like, huh, and then it's like, and he just gets stabbed.
Yeah,
like,
you see the dripping on the floor right next to him just before.
This
is one of the only fake shots I feel like in this movie is some of these scenes of the ship flying, because I think that they do most of the effects and stuff practically in this, and some of the only superimpositions are of the ship flying, and I think those are the only shots in this entire movie that I was like, yeah, it hasn't aged well, kind of not buying it. But that's pretty good for a movie this age to only have a couple of blue screen shots that don't really work.
To me, I'm geeking out about him this whole podcast, but James Cameron, one of the things that I find most remarkable about him, for a guy who has been continuously over the course of now almost 40 years, been on the cutting edge of movie visual effects and technology.
Knowing his limitations.
Always.
Doesn't exceed.
Never pushing too far to where he has to, so that today we can watch Terminator 2 30 years later and be like, looks better than a lot of stuff now, because he always is like, just far enough, far enough, and withholds. It's really terrific. There's another bit.
Great judgment.
This reminds me of, again, this featurette on the DVD where he talks about, this was a contemporaneous interview from the 1986, whatever, where he talked about wanting to make this movie, and I put the term down in my notes, a participatory experience for the audience, which is a term certainly I don't think we use or think about now.
I was not given a loader when I went in.
Well, it's so interesting because it kind of pre-imagines, I think, 3D, or at least modern use of 3D. Obviously 3D existed before this movie, but modern use of 3D and like 4D and all these kind of 5D, all these terms that we throw around for like expensive movie going things, and talking about just trying to do that in the old fashioned way with a normal, light and picture and sound film. But I mean, a guy very, very keen to understand how to bring the audience into it. A true master.
This scene that we just saw, I don't know why they cut it out of the movie. It's so good, and I love the close-ups and everything. When she says like, I'll be back, Hicks, and he's like John or whatever his first name is, I forget.
Right.
And then she's like Ellen. Yeah, it's like fucking awesome.
Yes, it is.
And it's such a quick little thing. Like, why get rid of that? It's a character moment between the two of them, like getting to forming this family bond, right? He's like the father now to her, and Ripley being Newt being the child. And then, like, also, we're learning her first name for the first fucking time over 2 movies. We've never heard it before, I'm pretty sure.
I think we've seen it in some...
Like, written on a document.
Yeah, but the point remains.
Yeah.
The point remains entirely that it's absolutely a human moment.
And I think that's one of the times when it's, like, mistaking...
Here's that great moment that I love.
Yeah. I think that's one of the times that mistaking a quiet moment for, like... that it's, I think maybe they were afraid it was going to stall this. Hey, she's going to go get Newt back, and we're in an action moment, and you can't have this quiet moment of them just exchanging names without sort of grinding it to a halt. And sometimes things like that do grind a sequence to a halt.
Yeah.
Well, originally it was written as she says Ellen, and he says, "Oh, is that short for Eleanor, or is that just your name?" And then she's like,
"Funny you should ask, because my grandmother was Eleanor, but my mom was Ellen."
What were we doing again?
Yeah. Or she says Ellen, and he's like, I would have thought you were...
The countdown is like 30 seconds
Connie.
left. She's like, oh, shit. You know what? I'm just going to get on the ship now. Also, you got this great misdirect where we've known Bishop's going to fuck her the entire time because androids are not trustworthy and blah, 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 blah. And she tells Hicks, make sure he doesn't leave. And Hicks is, obviously incapacitated. What's he going to do? And then they come back and the ship is gone. And you have this moment of realization of like, oh, Bishop, you bastard, you screwed us. And then just when it looks like and she actually, the queen is closing in and she tells Newt, close your eyes, baby. And she's like basically readying them for their deaths. And then Bishop shows up, just had to, platform was getting really unstable. And that's why I think that's another reason that the double ending works. It's another reason you're so relieved because you've already gotten your surprise rescue. You know, you've already gotten you've gotten so many surprise rescues at this point that you're just like,
and
oh my
you,
God, are we
as
done?
an audience member, are finally confirmed like that he is a good guy.
Yes.
You know, and you're like, oh,
We can
I'm so
trust
happy to
him.
be back and trust this guy. Oh, he's dead now.
And of course, and also the way he dies is so clever.
He doesn't die though.
Well, he doesn't
Right,
die, but the way he is attacked is so clever because he clearly isn't going to have an alien implanted in him, but they have a chest bursting moment with him. You know, this giant thing bursts out of his chest and you have this, oh my God, was he? No, it's the Queen's tail.
It's a
And-
great opportunity to rip someone in half in a movie, which has like never been done because it's too gory and they wouldn't allow it.
Yep.
But because he has white blood, they can do it, and they
Yeah.
can do it as nasty
And
as
it's
possible.
such a good looking, like she like spirals his top half off of his bottom half. It's like
That's
such-
Just the
So gross.
power that it
yeah.
suggests.
I wonder how many
yeah.
times they had to do
Oh.
that take to get it so he just spun and twisted just right.
And he's
that-
got such a face. It's such a great casting.
Yes.
You know, he looks he's so human and emotional, but he looks very much like a
Yep.
robot, like in a weird way. But the pain that he shows,
And
in
they do a
that
nice job
performance-
with the torso
Yeah,
work
completely,
afterwards when he's in
completely.
half and he rescues Newt. He gets like an additional heroic moment where
so
he's
cool.
already been a hero like 3 times in this movie, and then he gets an additional moment where even though he's been torn in half, he keeps Newt from getting sucked out of the airlock.
I think it's one of the more important characters in all of James Cameron's filmography because of how, you know, it ties together so many ideas that he has and conflicted feelings that he seems to have toward technology.
and plays off one of the biggest twists of the original.
For sure, for
one of
sure.
the things that this movie does so well is respecting everything about the
Uh-huh,
original film
100%. Well said.
and going above it, like taking it and just knocking it up a level, like
Yep.
saying, okay, we're going to do something that's an action movie, and it's a war movie, and it's all these things that the
It's
first
got
movie
such-
wasn't.
I
but we've
completely
got
agree with
such
you.
reverence. It opens.
He
with
has
a-
such balls making
Yeah.
this movie to take on something so iconic and to be like, oh, how about I do it totally in a fucking
and it
different
opens
tone?
with a shot of them all sleeping in their, like, just like the first, like he mirrors direct scenes and shots in the first movie, but he always has some kind of inversion or twist or play on them. And that's the Bishop character is a great example of saying, oh, you got a duplicitous android. I can work with that. I can do something with that.
I think maybe we should rate this thing. What do you guys say?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I think, I mean, I'll be quick. I've already said everything I need to say about this movie. It's amazing. It is one of my all-time favorites, and one of my, just top movies ever. I think it's the greatest action movie ever made. If you've ever read the script, it's one of the greatest action scripts ever written. I think it's one of the greatest action movies, one of the greatest sequels, one of the greatest sci-fi movies. It's just amazing. If you've never seen this movie, I envy you for getting to see it for the first time. If you're not even big into sci-fi movies or horror movies or action movies or whatever, this is a movie that transcends a lot of that. So can't recommend it highly enough. 10 Timothy Dolphins.
Wow. Great assessment.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Not bad for a human.
Not bad for a human.
Not bad
And
for
now
a
you guys just all agree with me,
7
and
foot
then
tall.
we'll be done.
I agree almost with that entirely. I don't think it's the best action movie because Terminator 2 exists, but
Hard
it's-
Boiled, in my mind, is the only one that even comes close.
I mean, it's on the shortest of short lists. For me, it's one of my all-time favorite sequels ever made, except I don't think it's better than the original, but that's just a nitpick, and it's almost not worth comparing because in a sense they are quite different films.
Yes.
At least tonally and in their objective, I think. But, if you were to make a list of greatest sequels, it has to be on any short list of that. And in a way, maybe the best, even though I don't prefer it to the original, because I think that it is so brave in how it subverts some of the aspects of the original, but to your point, honoring it all the while, and somehow managing to do both. And it's just a really, 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 truly incredible movie that has not aged like a day in 35 years. But this moment, we're watching the reveal of the Queen. I mean,
The Queen
just
is so good.
the silence in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
no score at all, no dialogue at all. Just now the sound effects of the flamethrower as it kicks back in, the scream of the Queen, but just how he understands the power of the visual and letting us just sit in the tension
Her
of this
face
moment.
says it right there.
Oh,
She's like, if
completely.
you fucking move, I'm going to torch these things, or like if you send these guys, and then they back up. See,
And the perspective of the scale of the queen. This is just such a well shot scene, but we're in the middle of Jonathan's wrap.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay.
Continue.
It bears a pause to enjoy it again. But just one of the great monster movie moments, really, for me of all time. Like put it up there with any monster reveal ever is this moment right now.
What I love about it too is that, I mean, I wasn't alive when the first movie came out, but I don't think many people were questioning like what's laying these eggs. It was just alien enough that like there are eggs. You know, it's like James Cameron was smart enough to say, how can I elevate this movie, the lore of it? How can I like one up what we already know about the gestation of these creatures, and like what more could be added to them, you know? And it's like, in hindsight, it's like right there in front of you, like what lays these eggs? It must be a big one of these things, you know? It's like, but also it's like, it's such a brilliant element, and to save it for the end of this movie. And it's not really, I think there's one line earlier where someone says like, well, what's laying these eggs? It must be a big motherfucker or something like that.
Also cut out of the original.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. The whole Bill
Paxton.
Paxton and Vasquez talk about ants and ant farms and queens and bees and whatever.
I think there's one part of that line that is in the theatrical, but yeah, you're right. That whole thing with the ants or whatever.
That's what I'm telling you. If you go down the list of all the stuff cut out, I'm like, the defense for all of them are right there. I don't think there's bloat anywhere in his version of the film.
I think they add texture. I do think that the streamlined version in most cases is, I think, better. But I guess it depends on what you prioritize. I think it's a matter of taste, really.
Yeah, I do like a lot of the scenes that are added in. I feel like they elevate it so much, but there is something to be said about like watching even right now. Like there's still so much of this movie left, and I'm like, oh my god, we've been watching this. Like it does feel a little long. I don't know where I don't know if I'd call it bloat or like I don't know, but like it just feels like a couple minutes. I think the theatrical one. There you go. Yeah.
She tore away from her.
I think the theatrical version is just a little tighter and like it kind of plays a little bit better.
All right, let's get back to John.
Movies should always be longer.
Yeah. What's
Slower.
my rubric here?
More boring.
1 to 10, Timothy Dolphins.
Yeah, 10, baby. Stack them up.
Great.
Did you already go, Matt?
No, I didn't go. I'll go quick. I'm basically just saying the same thing. I mean, I gave the first movie a 10, but this movie is in its own category, and I think it's right up there. It's like, for me, it's a movie that I love watching time and time again. I always try to imagine like I'm watching it for the first time, because like you're right, Harris. Like I envy people who get to watch this for the first time. In fact, at that screening, I think Colleen had never seen it before, so I was like, you know, excited for her to experience it.
As she was watching the film, you were just sitting next to her, staring at her face.
Look at your reactions, your beautiful reactions.
Yes.
Did you get it? Did you like that part?
Structurally, I think this is like a near perfect script. You know, it's like everything happens at the right time when it's supposed to. There's no fat. It's like, it's just great. The acting is great. Sigourney Weaver is great. The aliens look incredible. The Queen is
7 or 8 Oscar noms.
Did it?
Something.
imagining,
I
like,
looked it up
effects.
just the other day, and I was like, "Damn, it really got recognized." Several. It won 2.
I mean, this movie rules now. I can't imagine in 1986 what the other hot garbage
sure.
probably looked like, you know? And like this movie, for being a sci-fi movie, getting that many nominations, and especially a Best Actress nomination, like, God, it must have just blew people away in 1986.
5 Oscar noms: Best Actress, Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Best Sound, Best Editing, Best Music and Original Score. James Horner, which we didn't really even talk about. I was surprised Colin didn't bring it up, since he basically just...
the last name Horner is like a living pun that Colin
well,
can jump off.
also James Horner scored Star Trek 2 and 3,
The Wrath of Khan,
and had so little time to work on this that he just basically took a lot of Wrath of Khan stuff and threw it into this.
the scene where Burke hides in the little closet and cuts them off from like running away or whatever. The end of that scene is like almost the exact score of Wrath of Khan.
Interesting.
But I think the Wrath of Khan score is better. But I mean, who's to say?
It was 7, Harris, because it was 5 noms but 2 wins on top of that.
Oh yeah, you're right.
What were the 2 wins
point.
for?
Best effects, visual effects, best effects, sound effects, editing.
Nice.
Wow.
So 7 noms.
They just played that scene where the Queen is like ripping off of the sack layer, the egg layer thing. They just play that over and over, and they're like, "Best sound." Here's your Academy Award.
Cameron was 32 when this came out.
Wow.
He truly is like the what's the Citizen
That's
Kane
just remarkable,
guy?
man.
What's his name? Orson Welles. He's the Orson Welles of our time.
Yeah.
Wunderkind.
Well, you know, and again, another thing, I keep referencing this featurette, but he talks a lot about his time working with Roger Corman and how like all of that stuff applied directly to making this, the budgetary stuff with the 6 suits and, you know, just understanding how to be economical and moving fast and all that. And I mean, my God, imagine at 32 years old. And the other cool thing about this as a sequel too, that I think we glossed over or didn't even touch, was 7 years elapsed between the first one and this one, and that's pretty rare for a sequel, like to wait that long for a hit to come out with even the next one. And then it really launched, the franchise was launched by this. I'd say more than the original. So
this movie directly inspired the making of The Godfather 3.
So true.
So it wasn't all good.
Right.
That's
Anyway, let me just finish my thing. So yeah, I mean, I know I say it a lot, but it really applies here. It's a fucking perfect movie. 10 Timothy Dolphins.
I'm gonna give it 9 Timothy Dolphins. I would like to see. I would like to see Jonesy come back in some way. That's my main criticism.
This is why we can never have a perfect score, because Colin will not give it anything 10 Timothy Dolphins.
Yeah, but any other movie is like always getting like way better scores.
He'll never give anything
because
lower than like a 6, but he won't go higher than 9.
Yeah, I like it. It's a bit.
He's got a 3-point score. It's like 6, 7, 8, 9.
No,
yeah,
I'm
four possible outcomes.
No, I'm willing to believe that there are movies I hate out there. I just, you know,
haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that the most the film has ever gotten from a full jury panel?
yes.
I think
39?
so.
That might be our highest
good.
ever. Yeah,
pretty
this
good.
might end up being in the running for the highest series, because I think they've all been pretty high.
Yeah,
the
so
first
far.
two got really high scores, and
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think you guys are gonna like Alien Resurrection a lot more than you remember. I don't know.
I think
love
I'm
it.
gonna like it. more
I'm
than I
eager to
remember.
return to the sequels past this one, now that I've gone back to this one.
Yeah, they're
So
great.
are we.
Jonathan, thank you so much for
Pleasure,
being our
guys.
guest. I know you're working on some cool stuff, but I don't know if you're at liberty to talk about anything.
I will have some, hopefully, more news coming up soon, but
Well, I should say this episode is coming out in October. So
October.
Yeah.
In October, I should be hopefully in post-production in a short feature film that has been a long-term working project between myself and a collaborator, a writer that I've worked with in the past, and he executive produced his own script and asked me to direct it, and we're going to see what we make out of that. It's a bit avant-garde. It's a bit of a strange kind of art film that has some really interesting touch points for me emotionally, but Tina Town is the name of it, and I hope to have some more for you guys in a little while, but keep
Awesome.
your ears
Cool.
peeled for that.
how can people find or read the rantings and ravings of one Jonathan Maurer on social media?
I don't have a huge footprint on it these days, but I'm a Phantom G6 at Instagram, so tune in there for your Tina Town updates and a lot of baby pictures if you're into that kind of thing.
Great. Love baby
Nice.
pics.
Well, you'll get them there.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll have you back for our eventual Terminator 2 episode, which
You
we
know,
will
I
do
am
one
waiting
day.
on bated breath. I'll bring the Cameron praise anew.
Great.
And if you ever want to take on the Irishman live screening, live
God.
watch along.
Once they
I'm
make The
your guy.
Irishman 2, then we can consider it. Some might say there are several sequels within the first movie.
I think Irishman is
own
a
franchise,
spiritual sequel
yeah.
to Goodfellas, so you can go right there.
I thought Casino was a spiritual sequel to Goodfellas.
That's a trilogy for you.
There you go.
Oh
A
god.
like day-long trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a lot of time.
Good Irish casinos.
Isn't Casino 3 hours?
Yeah, more or less.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And Irishman is 3.5, right?
hmm
Wow.
Goodfellas is 2.5. So
Hey,
None
math.
of them are short.
9 hours right there for you, baby.
I think Goodfellas
Full
is the
day.
only one I actually
That's good.
really like.
Uh,
I'm not a big Casino fan.
we
I-
talked about
I
this last
understand
time. You were wrong because Casino's great.
Yeah. When did we just talked about this, right?
Yeah. We're going to end every episode with this now.
Okay.
Casino just keeps on coming up.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to watch it now.
All right. I think we have to go. That's it.
That's it. A wrap on our. Is this maybe our longest episode ever?
It definitely is.
We actually have gotten close to finishing this fucking movie, which I thought was an impossibility when we started.
Wait, did you
Now
just
we
press
now we
stop
have
in
an
the-
obligation to keep going.
I thought Matt pressed stop in the middle of Harris talking.
Yeah, we've heard enough.
That would have been funny. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing left for us to say.
I can say thank yous. Thank you to Jonathan. Thank you to C-Rock, Chris Morocco for doing the music. If you like this show, rate, review, and subscribe it on iTunes or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts.
Should we go out by saying this famous line as Sigourney Weaver says it in the movie?
Perfect.
Wait, just turn it up. Oh wait, no.
Walks
Too
into a
late.
close up.
Bitch. Get away from her, you bitch.
Do you know what the actual tagline to this movie was?
Oh god.
This is going to be war or something
This
like that?
time, it's war.
This time it's war.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
That is one of the biggest tagline drop-offs from one movie to the next.
Yeah. Oh my god. It's
The
terrible.
original, one of the great taglines of
Terrible.
all time,
Yep.
of course. But oh well. Movie
I always
movie still
remember
smacks.
when I was a kid seeing commercials for Alien 3 on TV, and it was like that the trailer voice guy, whose voice sounds like this, and, and he's like, next summer the bitch is back. That was like the tagline for that.
Nice.
Great, but we'll talk more about that on our Alien 3 episode. So this is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo, signing off.
Thank you guys for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe if you like this show. Please tell your friends about us. Thank you to our lovely guest, Jonathan Maurer. And as always, thank you to Chris Morocco, aka C-Rock, for providing his music to the show. Also, check out his new EP, Alien, which he did exclusively for this show on Bandcamp now. If you like this show and you want to hear even more exclusive content from us, please join our Patreon by going to patreon.com/L2W and subscribe for just $1 measly a month. Help support the podcast by joining. By doing so, you get instant access to over 30 shows of us covering non-franchise classics, with a new episode every month. Again, that's www.patreon.com/L2W. This show is a part of the Fandom Limb podcast network, so be sure to check out some of their other awesome shows. And join us next time for David Fincher's Alien 3.
Frontier in about 6 weeks. With a little luck, the network will pick me up. This is Ripley, last survivor of the Nostromo, signing off.